Welcome to Speaking of Strong Style, where we discuss the news, issues, and events surrounding New Japan Pro Wrestling. I'm Stephen Conway. With me, of course, is Jeremy Finestone, contributors to the Fight Game Media Network. This is part 2 of our 2-day Wrestle Kingdom week preview. Today, we are going hardcore on the big event itself. And of course, there's some other news to talk about. But mostly today, we are focusing on what's going on in the Tokyo Dome on January 4th, the biggest show of the year, my favorite day of the year. Can't wait for it. We're very excited. We have a very special guest, which we talked about before, and we're going to bring him on in just a moment. But Jeremy, part 2 of our preview, and how are you feeling going into this? Another day closer, even a little bit more New Japan news. So every day is exciting.
I feel pretty good. The irony's not lost on me that we are having 2 nights of Wrestle Kingdom preview for the one night that there's only one Wrestle Kingdom this year. Go figure. I guess we just can't get enough of it. And thank you for joining us if you are checking out Speaking of Strong Style. I'm Jeremy Finestone. This is Stephen Conway. We are covering New Japan Pro Wrestling. We are part of the Fight Game Media Network. If you enjoy what you're watching here today, and I think you will, hit that like button. Subscribe, tell your friends, email us at speakingofstrongstyle@gmail.com. Let us know where we should put this podcast out in the world so that more people hear about it. We feel like we have good content. We have a great guest today with Chris Samsa, which we're about to bring on today. And we're just going to dive deep into New Japan for the past year, talk about Wrestle Kingdom, talk about some of the stuff that Chris Samsa does with New Japan Pro Wrestling. He's been making the rounds, and he has graciously decided to spend some time with us today. So we're going to bring him on.
All right. So let's bring on Chris. Chris, thank you so much for joining us once again on Wrestle Kingdom Week.
Hello. Happy Wrestle Kingdom Week, everybody.
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
Well, I don't know. I'm a G1 guy myself, but
well, G1's pretty great.
It's nice to have 2 greatest times of the year.
You also have to remember, Wrestle Kingdom is also Steven's birthday.
Oh,
so for him, it's the most wonderful time of the year. That's
tremendous.
Yeah, it really is. And also, I mean, for me, the one of the reasons, I mean, I love G1 too. We had you on not too long ago for a G1 type of show, but for me, the Dream Queendom. Now there's New Year. Noah New Year has to do with New Japan. It's a pretty New Japan centric show. There's just all kinds of peripheral events that I'm excited about too. So there's a lot going on. So
there's so much going on. Lucky me, no one's asked me to cover anything besides New Japan this week. So
yeah, no,
I'm just living in that lane.
You're the Western world representative for all things New Japan, and honestly, you're a great ambassador at it, and spread the word and the data and the information that you share, frankly speaking, is unparalleled for anybody in any other promotion. So I tip my cap to you publicly, because man, what you do is a service to all of pro wrestling.
Well, thank you. My whole approach is just to make pro wrestling and this particular set of pro wrestling more approachable. I feel like, numbers and statistics and data, it's all really relatable. So that's kind of the avenue, but then I get to talk to people like you and kind of bring it all together verbally too, which is great. I love it. I love these weeks where I get to do the runaround. I like to call it the car wash. So, this is just one of the stops along the way that I love to make. And I'm glad we carved out the time to do it on a Friday afternoon after my plumbers left, because I'm getting a bathroom remodeled on the opposite side of this wall. And he was, I was like, you gotta go, it's time. So he's a chatty guy, but I'm glad it all panned out almost like I planned it.
Boy, that's always a project.
It's a project. We got some projects around this house right now.
Yeah, we did a bunch on ours during the pandemic too. We did all the pandemic remodeling, so I can relate to all that. So looking at this week, now we've had news. I was telling Jeremy yesterday that for a change, I was very glad that a piece of news came out the day after we recorded. And that was the news that Hiroshi Tanahashi is now the president of New Japan. And the reason I was grateful for the few days is because I wanted some time to digest it all. And it's been about a week since the announcement. Tanahashi has given a brief little message in a press conference that was diplomatic, didn't say a whole lot, but he's not going to, is he? I mean, it's a little early for all that. He'd just been promoted, basically said that, well, we're here to sell out the Tokyo Dome. Like I mentioned, that's probably the goal every year, isn't it? Just to go and sell a lot of tickets. But just from your perspective on this, Chris, I would love to hear what you thought. Did it come out of left field for you? And what were your initial impressions of the idea that the Ace, a wrestling guy, has, for the first time in Bushy Road's ownership of the company, been put in charge? We've had wrestlers in the past, but not during the Bushy Road era. And this is a departure, and one that's most people seem to be very excited about.
Yeah, I mean, what's not to be excited about? Someone who we are all familiar with and who is just almost universally beloved in pro wrestling. Like, what's not to be excited about putting him into a position where he's, if nothing else, an ambassador officially, a decision maker officially, right? I mean, I'm sure that there will be, I'm sure he'll have some resources and some growing pains, and he referenced that already. And I think that the structure of leadership in New Japan is there to support him. But I think, if nothing else, it's a public relations win at a time when, I mean, it's pretty likely that New Japan needed that. And not that they were circling the drain or anything. I mean, I think business is healthy. I think the product is healthy. I think the trajectory is good. But he wanted to do it. It's been his goal. He's said that before, and it was time. And you can read between the lines, or if you read, probably you guys read the Observer today, or at least the clips from the Observer today, right? Like,
sure,
a lot of that's there's always some weight behind those things that end up sneaking their way out, right? So if we're talking about Okada and being serious about maybe leaving, like, there's probably something to that. Was it as heavy as it's maybe been made out to be? I don't know, right? Like, no one really knows that. Was he talking to Barry Bloom? Is he still talking to Barry Bloom? No, like, no one can get a clear answer on some of that, and they're not going to. That's not how New Japan or Japanese pro wrestlers in general work. So, with all that said, like, did that influence this decision happening? Probably, right? Like, if nothing else, I look at Tanahashi as a guy who can guide, have a wrestler's mindset for what New Japan is. And that, I think, is one of the most important things, because the perception of, going and working in New Japan, even from, Westerners or Bryan Danielson or whoever's going over, Jon Moxley, those guys still love to do that. And they want to keep that reputation and keep that ability to recruit in that way. And I think having a guy like Tanahashi in a space where he at least has the perception of some power, I think that's can only be a positive.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that it is telling that for the first time Bushy Road put a wrestling guy in charge. It tells me that they felt strongly that there was a disconnect between the locker room and the company, and they needed to bridge that gap. That they had reached a point where it was time to bridge the gap. And the thing that I mentioned here, Chris, was the first thing that came to my mind is maybe Tanahashi can be the guy that goes to the office and just says, hey, can we spread out the schedule a little bit? Maybe not 13 shows in 20 days, for the World Tag League, because when El Fantasma was on our show, he was talking about how beat up he was. Maybe something along the lines of like you said, the wrestler's voice, not only to the fans and as an ambassador to them. And he is going to be doing that. He said that he would be doing meet and greets and some things like that in various towns and meeting the fans in person and trying to get a little of that personal connection in that he's so good at. But more than that, just be able to go into the office and just, guys, this is the style we work. This is what we go through. And we need some days off. We need maybe to spread this out a little bit. Maybe there are things he can tell them that would help. Over and over again, also, Dave mentioned, title matches in towns that don't normally get them. We heard it with the TV title, and then it didn't happen. And then those title matches have basically been in the same cities they're always in, to the point that those cities probably aren't that excited about title matches. And then these towns that aren't getting it. He said it again. Maybe he can be the one that actually does something about that and maybe get some new main events rather than, 6-man multi-matches on top in these towns that could use a little bit of juice. Maybe he's the guy that can tell them this is what's going to help, not a guy looking at a spreadsheet.
Yeah. I don't foresee him influencing the booking any more than he already was. I mean, you got to believe a guy like Hiroshi Tanahashi has a voice in the room, right? Like,
Sure.
But I think the great thing that you brought up is just the general layout of the schedule. I think that's something that he very well may influence, and we may not see that for a year or two because the way booking buildings in Japan works is they're like all the Korakuen dates for New Japan are booked already for 2024. And that's how most
you have to in that building.
It's like the cup. You announced the cup information, and it looks like it's locked in. It's not like they can suddenly pivot.
Exactly.
But did all that.
Exactly. So I think that that's helpful. But I think a lot of the stuff he's talking about really, I had some conversations with some people on the sort of business side of pro wrestling, and they were asking like, is Hiroshi Tanahashi capable of this role for New Japan? And my answer is, in all likelihood, yeah, because I mean, he's so involved and so there and so present already. But the other piece of the puzzle is pro wrestling in Japan is not as dynamic of a business as pro wrestling in America, right? There's not as many arms. It's really sell tickets, right?
Yeah.
And so when Tanahashi's talking about putting title matches on in smaller cities or selling out the Tokyo Dome, what he's really saying is we want to honor the fans' wishes so that they buy the tickets. The rest of it, everything else that comes, New Japan World subscriptions, TV, whatever TV they do have there broadcasting, none of that comes even close to sell more tickets. And that's something I heard all throughout the pandemic when I would talk to people and kind of do kind of health check on the business. All the practices that they put into place through 2020, 2021, and 2022 were all about selling more tickets, right? That's why we kept to see those double shots. That's why we saw bigger buildings, so you could just put as many people as you want, no matter how cavernous it sounded. Like, they just needed to sell tickets. And now we're coming back, right? And, when someone asks me what can New Japan do to kind of level out the schedule, I say, go look at 2017, 2018, 2019. Like, those were like the healthiest scheduling years, and they felt so classic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how that affects the booking, right? Let's say you want to, Gato is booking the New Japan Cup. He's got 11 days to fill. He's got to figure out how many guys that tournament needs. Same with something like a G1. So if the buildings are already booked, maybe we're going to see another year of this, like kind of how we've been doing it. Maybe not. I don't know. It's going to be a really interesting ride, and I'm just really glad that, and I'm way more hopeful that some more wrestlers stick around. Obviously Okada included, but even some other guys too. Just Bushiroad and New Japan actually making this move. I think, I mean, we've heard it from various sources. It's just party in the dojo. Like, literally, that's what we heard, is that the parties at the dojo, and like, it was a real thing. Like, they're excited. The morale is high. And I think that's great going into the biggest show of the year.
It is exciting. And I think another aspect of that, just psychologically, is the talent seems to feel like they're going to be listened to. And I get the idea that they didn't feel that way. I'm sure Obari would have a different side of it, and probably Harold May would have a different side of it. But it was clear that listening to the reaction to Tanahashi's announcement, they felt like they had been treated as just mere entry-level employees. They weren't listened to. And one of the lines in the clip I saw from the Observer was that the interpretation of Obari was that he saw Okada as the lead star of a touring show, like a Broadway musical where you just replace have someone else do the lines and sing the songs and things. But we all know that wrestling is unique in that way. It doesn't work that way. Blue Man Group, Cirque du Soleil,
sure,
they're anonymous. There's a reason you don't know their names, so they can switch them out anytime they want to, and nobody has to get paid too much. But wrestling is different. Okada is Okada. You don't just replace Okada. And hopefully this is somebody that can interpret that correctly and work with the main company and explain to him some of the wrestling things that maybe don't show up when you're running a game conglomerate or a merchandise conglomerate. So
sure.
I'm encouraged, and hopefully it'll be interesting to see too, since they're being so caught. He's going to address all of us at Wrestle Kingdom as president.
That does sound to be the plan. Yeah.
And that's intriguing because
after a win, after a loss, who knows, right?
Who knows? Or before it. I mean, I could see him coming out before.
I guess. One thing, I just kind of my last piece that just crossed my mind. Like, I have to wonder if Bushiroad learned from the Stardom situation with all the injuries and the situation kind of backstage there that we people sort of heard about. But just, I mean, even without hearing things about it, just seeing the terrible rash of injuries that they've had there, you have to wonder if they had to consider, like, are we doing this right? Yeah. So, and I think that, a guy like Tanahashi can set some, they can set that up. I know he was one of the influencers in taking the G1 from like an 8-day event with like a billion with singles matches every day. And some of those cards are some of my favorite shows to go back and watch from 2011, 12, 13. But, to make that first initial move to stretch it out a little bit, which ended up being a great business move too. So he was involved in that. So you got to believe he's got the wrestlers in mind. And I think that's all they're asking for right now.
Yeah, and there's something that Dunstan Williams is here, and he makes a good point here. It might be a good time to take a gamble and go to different venues for big shows. And I don't know if they'll do that. They are doing that tour of Hokkaido, which is different. They plan to do that in 2020. Then the pandemic wiped all that out. Before, they basically just went to Sapporo up there. And that was really the town. They would run 2 nights in Sapporo and then come back, sometimes something else. But a full-blown tour of Hokkaido is in the plans. So they have been looking at different venues, different towns, maybe that they weren't hitting before. So it does look like some of that will happen.
So we got 175 events on the calendar for 2023. And you were talking about, according to Cage Match.
That sounds right. Yeah, no, that sounds right.
So about there. We got to say that 2024 more or less locked in, like you were saying. But 2025 and 2026, do you think it'll still be 175 mapped out differently, or 150-ish with a little bit more? Like, what's your instinct on what how willing they are to consider the workers?
Well, I don't even know. I don't know.
Right.
They have the roster to do as many shows as they want, truthfully. I mean, the size of the roster, the talent, etc. I think the habit that they got in was kind of having everyone on every tour almost, right? Except for the juniors for G1 and the heavy
tag league and the Super Junior tag league. They were a little sparse on their lineup.
For sure. So, but with that said, like, I think they've got I think maybe it's more about looking at some individual schedules, right? I mean, you've got a guy like Bushi who worked 122 dates last year in 2023. And there's not that he's not the only one that's up there. There's a lot of guys that worked a lot of matches. And I think limiting that might be good. I think spreading it out a little bit more. I think, like I said, like, the roster is deep and it's only getting bigger. It doesn't feel like, of course, like, you see some big names jump into AEW or kind of leaving New Japan behind. But the young guys are coming together quickly. You got guys like Fujita and Oiwa, and you've got the partnership with Noah, and you're extending olive branches to Dragon Gate and Kyosho Pro and some other like really small promotions. And some of that's recruiting. I mean, let's be honest. But some of it is, can this guy come on this tour? And maybe these guys, maybe that's part of the play, right? And you're always going to want your top stars in top spots, but I think there's also enough of them that they can spread the tours out. And maybe it's more of a situation where they're still running 175, 80 dates, but nobody's wrestling more than 100.
Yeah, it's interesting to me the way some of these Road to shows work too, which are essentially house shows, the Japanese version of house shows, that. But at the end, on top of it, you'll have tags underneath, then 2 6-man tags and an 8-man tag, and there's 30 guys on the card, and there's 30 guys on a card with 300 people in the crowd. And you're just kind of wondering, okay, well, maybe we can be a little bit more economical with this and maybe take some bumps off of people's cards for a little bit and, spread that out a little bit, if nothing else.
I mean, the greatest bump in Japan is sitting on a bus. Like, and that's, that's tongue in cheek, right? But like, there's a lot of miles logged in a bus and you ain't getting a bunk, right? Like, you're sitting up. So I think that's, but we, you know, again, the New Japan side hasn't seen such a rash of injuries. So like Stardom, I mean, but Stardom, you rarely see those girls, sorry, phone it in, right? And you know,
Right.
you know what you get on an undercard 6-man from New Japan, right? And sometimes they show up and they're amazing. The finishing stretch is always great, but the first 8 minutes is usually whatever, right? So
yeah, t-shirts stay on. We're not going to get too into
but
this.
They still got to make the towns. So like that's tough. So we'll see. I don't foresee a lot changing because they still need to sell the tickets when it comes down to it. Yeah. But how they get there maybe a little bit different, and maybe they're just going to different places, so it's a little more exciting too.
Yeah, that would probably help. It's and the other thing that we were saying yesterday is the way New Japan operates. They aren't going to make big announcements. All of this stuff is changing. Look, there's not going to be some massive thing. It's going to be subtle. There won't be something where Tanahashi sits down and says, okay, here are all the things that are going to immediately be completely different. We're not going to get that from them. That's just not the way they do things. And of course, one of the first questions we got was, are they going to replace Geto? Are they going to replace Geto? I don't think so. He's been the booker through a lot, but if they do, they probably won't say publicly. We'll have to find out through back channels, because they don't publicly acknowledge that there's a booker.
We won't know that Gato's not the booker until probably a pretty long time after he's done booking. I mean, unless someone catches wind of it. But even then, the English speaking wrestlers that I talk to, they don't, all they get is the information. They get their information various ways. It gets kind of passed around. It gets figured out. It's not as like clean cut as everyone sitting in a room with a whiteboard and it's like this person over this person in 10 minutes, like it's very, it's classic. They talk individually and they talk to different people and they talk to each other. And, it's really interesting to kind of understand a little bit of kind of where it all comes from, because the mastermind is likely still Geto, but I don't know that I would say he's the only person in the room anymore. And he can still take all the credit, and kind of on you when you said, they're not going to make these big sweeping changes. Just look at the title picture, right? Look at all the New Japan championships, and they could have blown it all up and been like, all right, so now we've got the world championship, we've got the global heavyweight, we've got the TV championship. They could have just completely blown it up, but they did it over the course of 2.5 or 3 years to get to this point where they've kind of got this new generation of titles even. And so my bet would be that this has been the plan all along, to get to this particular set of titles. Cause I think we're done now. Like, I think we're done transitioning championships around, unless they eliminate the Never or something, but I don't really see that happening. So but that's the pace that it works at. So I don't think you'll see really the fruits of Tanahashi's labor for 2 or 3 years.
Right.
All right. Well, I mean, that's one of the things we love about New Japan is that they do think long term. They don't book week to week, and that's one of the benefits of their system, which you said is selling tickets. They're not a weekly television program. They don't have to panic if the rating drops a little bit and then just say, "Oh, we have to change our booking because the fans are tuning out." That's not what New Japan. It's about selling the tickets. So they don't have to be reactionary. They can think long term, and they aren't beholden to a television network to keep ratings up. So and that helps. It's part of what I like about it is that they can tell those longer term stories, and I'm sure they will. So a lot of people saying this, and Dunstan is leading the charge. Strong belts have got to go, he said. Well, they're definitely changing forms. I think there's one's going into this triple crown, this mysterious triple crown, and then we'll see what happens with Julia. Gosh, we don't know what's the strong women's title is definitely up in the air in a lot of ways. She seems to have perhaps one foot halfway out the door. Anyway, so we'll have to see how that turns out next. But a lot of that has to do with contract situations more than anything else. So.
Sure seems that way.
Mm-hmm. Jeremy,
anything else we want to cover before we start jumping into some lore and Wrestle Kingdom?
Well, I mean, we can go. The only thing I wanted to mention, because we didn't get to it yesterday, is that Doki won Concorso.
He sure did.
Contest, yes. And
I think I might have it. Hold on. Let's see. Do I have it?
He should have won last year too. If he got my vote, mostly just out of shock and awe. I was like, holy shit.
Why does this guy wear a shirt?
Well,
why does he ever? Why does he wear a shirt?
I said it somewhere else. I was like, the low man cannot be the guy that all the ladies love, right? Like he's got to wear the shirt, otherwise he's gonna start moving his way up the card, and that messes with the whole structure.
Yeah, Taichi's supposed to be the heartthrob, right? Yeah, there you go. So and just 5 guys there, or Sonata, of course, but
Sonata. Oh, geez, yeah. Look at that.
There you go. Well, there's the results. Hard to read there, but Doki won going away, 1,438 votes, and second place, Drilla Maloney, who is pretty cut. 1,000.
Oh my God, he looked like the Ultimate Warrior. Like his pictures, like I can't even describe it. He just like.
How about the politics of Hiroshi Tanahashi getting 6th place?
Well,
let's make the president look good.
When you factor in age,
right?
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Tama Tonga was last year's winner. He came in with 679 votes, and after that was Bolton Oleg, who is built like a Mack truck. To be fair,
yeah, I wouldn't want to run into him on the street.
And El Desperado was straight up not safe for work. We can't put his pictures on there for this one. He went full on with that. And I liked Kosei Fujita, who looked fabulous, by the way. Fujita had a good outing, but Fujita said, that's it. I'm doing nudity next year.
Glad we saved that for you, Chris.
That's one of my favorite moments for New Japan every year is the Concurso and the pictures.
If you we're doing weightlifting contest, world bodybuilding.
I'm over here like refreshing the English website for the link, just like when I know it's coming. I'm just that's my Wrestle Kingdom.
No, we talked about that with Chris last year on the show when Tama Tonga won. We were all about that. Yeah.
So one of the things that we were thinking about doing this time with you was to just kind of take a trip down memory lane through 2023, January, February, March, touch on each month without just like doing a deep dive, open up your cage match or whatever, but think about the things as we go through. What were iconic, formative, the things that happened that you can think of, like, and I'll read off last year's Wrestle Kingdom so we can start from there. And we'll just touch through the couple of months and just see if there's anything that, felt to you important when it happened during the month. And as we get to Wrestle Kingdom, it just feels like the stories that were being told.
Sure. So, yeah, that sounds fun.
All right. So last year, Wrestle Kingdom, we had the Rambo, and the final 4 appeared to be Great Khan, Shingo Takagi, Sho, and Toru Yano. They could be the same 4 again this year, except for Shingo.
I think it's going to be very different this year, but
yeah. I want to see Jeff Cobb in that kind of group. I feel like he might be a fun one to have in there, but he's probably not up for shenanigans when it comes to the wrestling matches.
I'll tell you, let me ask you this, Chris. I've been stumping for either Gabe Kidd or Coughlin to do the KOPW. I think those two would bring some very interesting stipulations to that, and it would give them something to do since they don't necessarily have to be in the title picture immediately. Plus, Gabe Kidd's got about 9 singles matches against various people to go. But I don't know. I did that this year. We saw that Shingo Takagi carrying it through, and then Taichi, and they did something fun with it. So where do you see that one?
Yeah, I think Gabe Kidd is the play for something like that, and I can only imagine the stipulations that he would put out there, because he's a mad. I mean, like he is leaning into being a madman, and yeah. I am impressed. I mean, he's a great time, but I would hate to see that detract from any trajectory that the tag team could have, because I think that there's so much potential with Kidd and Coughlin. Because Coughlin's a great character in his own right too. But Gabe Kidd gets the shine, really. So, but I think that putting him at least into this picture would be neat. So then he could jump back into it at some point if he wanted to, right? Other than that, I think looking back to it, I remember Great Khan being in this circle, and I remember being sort of excited by that because I thought maybe he would take more of kind of a shoot style approach to the KOPW, but we didn't really get that. We got some Shingo action, which ended up being really kind of awkward because he then was holding KOPW and challenging for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship as the New Beginning Tour went on. So I felt like that was odd. I feel like there's a lot of booking pivots with Shingo that happen.
Right. Yes, I think so too.
He's the plug and play guy. He's like, if you have a gap to fill in the schedule, you just put Shingo over there.
Yeah, but like, should the first challenger for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship after Wrestle Kingdom be a plug-in, or was him winning the KOPW a plug-in? and what possibly could have been the plan that was missing there, right? So yeah, I mean, I think the KOPW leveled out. I think Taichi did some cool stuff with it throughout the year. I mean, we got very little Toru Yano features, very few Toru Yano features this year, which is fine. He's normally been one of those guys that's on the top of that list of how many matches they work in a year, but because obviously his style, promotes him working plenty of matches in a year. But yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing to keep an eye on for this year's KOPW is guys like Great Okan. Like, are they going to stick in that kind of lane? Is he kind of a mid-card comedy guy, or does he have an upside? What the hell's going on with the United Empire? Could Hanare get a run with KOPW and do kind of a shoot style, BMF style? Like, I mean, I would love that, like various.
I feel like the most important thing that happened to Great Okan this year is that he got a haircut.
I mean, he should go the rest of the way, I think.
I mean, that's really like,
that's where I'm at.
His entire year, it is capped off with he got a haircut, and that is literally the most important thing that happened to Great Okan this year.
Yeah, I'll tell you what though, that match with Moxley was fantastic. That was one of his. That was one of his best matches of his career, and it showed me that there's still a lot there. And that maybe you just haven't quite found the way to bring it out yet. But that guy has something and quite a bit to offer, I think. I think Okan does. They just haven't quite found the right key to it yet.
Sure.
All right, so rest of this card. Satoshi Kojima, Togi Makabe, and Yuji Nagata defeated Minoru Suzuki, Tatsumi Fujinami, and Tiger Mask in 9 minutes, 10 seconds. Opening match. Catch 2-2 defeated Leo Rush and Yo in 10 minutes and 29 seconds. Feel like Catch 2-2 has that opening match slot nailed down lately. Oh, this brings us back. In 5 minutes and 47 seconds, Kairi defeated Tam Nakano.
Hey.
Woo.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, you know what happened afterwards.
Oh, memory lane. Just take that troll.
That whole the whole Stardom New Japan that just hasn't worked the way we were hoping it to. There's just no.
For those that don't know what we're coding, speaking of, immediately after, this was when Mercedes Moné made her debut in New Japan in what was highly heralded, but more or less a spectacular flame out when all is said and done. Just not nearly the delivery of, well, I mean, if we look at it, like the promise of what could have been versus what we got is a bit disappointing.
Well, we got two great Mercedes matches, one with Kairi, one with Mayu Iwatani. Then she got hurt.
Right.
Which was, and there was more than that. She wrestled, but that was the one. I think if she hadn't gotten hurt, we might be telling a different story now. But that was a sputter out of the gate, that thing right there. That was a sputter out of the gate. Having those two only do 5 minutes was tough to handle for fans. For fans of Stardom, certainly. We know how little they were able to showcase what they can do there.
We then had Bishamon defeat FTR in 10 minutes and 10 seconds. We had Zack Sabre Jr. defeat Ren Narita for the inaugural New Japan World Television title. And he has carried it. And current. And is still carrying the title. Longest reigning champion, most title defenses. What are the other platitudes that he has?
The most title defenses in the IWG under the IWGP banner is kind of the big one. And then, this year he won a bunch of singles matches. I think it was 23 singles matches he won.
Oh, we have your infographic.
Okay, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Yeah. But yeah, that's big too. I mean, even if they're short matches, and those are just his wins.
He was an Iron Man for the company, and he was a top level main eventer when they needed him to be. Oh, never open weight title match. Do you guys remember what this was?
This feels like an eternity ago.
Tama Tonga defeated Carl Anderson for the never open weight title.
Like, if you would ask me, like, just out of the blue, was this match last year's Wrestle Kingdom? I'd been like, absolutely not. That was so long ago.
Years ago.
But here we are, less than a year ago today. But a year ago, last Wrestle Kingdom, we were waiting to see if Carl Anderson would actually show up and make the town.
Business would be made.
And business was made in 9 minutes and 36 uneventful seconds.
Surgical. You're in, you're out.
Bright lights, baby.
Six-man tag team match. We had Hiroshi Tanahashi, Keiji Muto, and Shuta Umino defeating LIJ members Bushi, Sonata, and Tetsuya Naito, which would eventually lead to the Wrestle Kingdom 2 matches and the retirement match for Muto in February.
The big setup here was for Naito and Muto, and Naito and Muto drew a pretty big house in the Tokyo Dome. I mean, this is not unfamiliar territory for Tetsuya Naito. So, but I was happy.
He was very much unhighlighted in this card. This was just a match with a bit setup.
We kind of knew.
It wasn't like the spotlight of spotlights of the night. It was part of the mapping.
The real question was who's going to interact with Muto, right? Is it going to be Sonata or is it going to be Naito? And it ended up being Naito more than anything.
We then had the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Title 4-way match in which Hiromu Takahashi defeated Taiji Ishimori, El Desperado, and Master Wato in 16 minutes and 43 seconds. At the time, Ishimori was the champion, and Hiromu won the title at the time.
And part of the story, I think, is that Hiromu hasn't beaten Desperado since. So I think that's how we got to the Desperado match, but that hasn't really been clear.
They have been very ambiguous about the fact that he's got a checklist of people that he needs to beat in order to feel like he has completed everything that he needs to with his title reign. And it could have been explained better.
It could have. The other thing that strikes me about that match, now that we look back a year, but I remember saying that the biggest moment in this one was he doesn't have to win, but Wato needs to look good here because he's in with three of the best junior heavy workers in the world. And he was kind of the odd man out a year ago. This was he was 4th out of 4 in that list if you were going to rank him. And I just said it's really important for him to have a good showing in this match. If he does that, he can elevate himself. Doesn't need to win it, but he needs to look good in it. And he did. Now, this has been a very strong year for Wato and, ended up winning Best of the Super Juniors. Went through this whole, I thought, interesting run during World Tag League where he was involved in a lot of victories. He got a lot of wins during World Tag League in underneath matches, but he was winning a lot of those with Vendaval and things and seems to be set up to be a challenger to in the near future, I think, for either Hiromu or Desperado. Maybe not necessarily the first one, but I don't think it's a coincidence that almost every match that he was involved in the finish, it was him getting a win. That's usually a message in World Tag League. And so it ended up being the beginning of a very big year for Wato. I think he has elevated himself. Is he on Desperado and Hiromu's level? No, but I think those are the only two people that are. But other than that, I think he's one of the top juniors now, and the fans see him as a legit threat.
I mean, the story is for him to get to that next level. Sorry, Chris.
No, you're fine. You got to figure he's going to be out there with Desperado too.
Sure.
So he's going to be. He may not be on this year's Wrestle Kingdom card, but he's going to be present for that title match, and maybe that means he just jumps right in, and maybe he is the first challenger, no matter who wins, right? Because him and Desperado have this kind of sort of friendship going, but I don't think it would prohibit them from having a match.
It kind of, this sounds weird, they kind of remind me of Ken and Ryu from Street Fighter. Like they have a friendship. I'm sorry. They are mirrors of each other in a lot of ways, and they don't want to admit it.
I only have a few hobbies, and this is clearly the one that takes up most of my time.
I have many nerd corners that I keep my head around.
But they did such a good job on that whole thing that when Desperado actually put the Despo towel in his tights there as one of the towels hanging there, it got a big pop, and I felt good inside. So they did a good job with that story.
Yeah, that was a great story.
We then had what remained my match of the year, the IWGP United States Heavyweight Title match. Kenny Omega defeated Will Ospreay, 34 minutes, 38 seconds. We've all talked this match to death. There's not much to say other than it was the match of the year for me, but I give you guys the floor to add whatever you need to add about it.
I mean, the parallel this year is Danielson and Okada on the card, right? So if we're kind of tying it back to what's happening in a couple of days here, like that's the token big star from AEW coming to wrestle big star from New Japan. So, I think from a Western perspective, Omega and Ospreay was a bigger deal, especially because we hadn't seen it yet. But, with that said, like, this is kind of that, this is that classic spot on the card that had, Omega and Jericho, it had Omega and Ospreay, and now it's going to have Okada and Danielson. So I think it's a neat spot on the card. I think, it is not my match of the year. So we will.
Oh, this match right here. It's not
this match. This match is not my match of the year. The Kenny Omega Will Ospreay match of the year, but mine, I'm sure we'll cross it as we go through the months.
Sure.
But it is certainly going to be the match of the year. Like, I have no doubt about that.
There is a consensus that seems pretty.
Yeah,
popular,
like
right?
I can't. It's my 1A. Sure. It's my 1A. But there's just some other pieces to the puzzle that I like to throw out there in that kind of top match. But yeah, I mean, when you look back at it, though, was it a valuable match for New Japan to own? Yeah, of course. Did it keep Kenny Omega around? No, like he never came back. He didn't lose the title in Japan. He didn't move, he didn't really move the needle past Wrestle Kingdom, but that's a big needle to move. So there's nothing wrong with that per se. I just, I had hoped for maybe a Sakura Genesis or a Dominion appearance, like one or two extra shots on the big shows. So, but, I think it did, no pun intended, it elevated Will Ospreay even further to the point where it was a no doubter that he is the absolute best wrestler in the world. So that's worthwhile. And we've seen that play out this year on what I like to lovingly call the Will Ospreay goodbye tour, which he's been on without telling anyone. And I've been saying it privately everywhere that he's given all of his buddies the match of their lives because he's not sure that he's going to have a chance to do it again. So this year I look at the match that Will Ospreay's in for the Global Heavyweight Championship with Jon Moxley and David Finlay. And I think Will Ospreay's trying to give his buddy David Finlay the match of his life in the Tokyo Dome. And I don't know if that means Finlay wins. Most of the guys that Ospreay kind of worked those matches with they did not win. Ospreay was still mostly a winner this year, but
I had a scenario, and we'll get to it. And that feels like makes a lot of sense to me, but
that doesn't necessarily mean that Ospreay's not winning that title, though.
Right. Yeah. And the one thing that I just wanted to add to that, it ended up being the first match of what ended up being one of the great in-ring years any wrestler of any era has ever had. The variety of opponents, the places, the different types of matches. That Ospreay had a very, very special 2023. One of the best ever.
It was actually, it wasn't the Moxley match. It was maybe the match after Moxley in Chicago that he started just this run of matches, including the Orange Cassidy match at Forbidden Door. But it was the middle of 2022. Then he got a little bit injured in March. Had to take a little bit of a break. But then he just picked up right where he left off. And most people forget that he was on the shelf for 2 months in the middle of March. Like, people have completely forgotten at this point and just think it like he was just running the show all year long. But speaking of someone who was not running the show all year long, Kazuchika Okada defeated Jay White in 33:03. Jay White was the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. Okada took the belt and thus began another goodbye tour for one Jay White.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, Jay White's goodbye tour was mostly just
will he or won't
just
he?
Goodbye. Yeah.
But that set the stage for later stuff in New Japan for the title scene. But we also had the New Year's Dash, we had the Wrestle Kingdom in Yokohama, and then we had the New Beginning in Nagoya. Were there anything from those that month that you guys think of and just be like, yeah, those were iconic moments for New Japan?
Well, wasn't the Kiyomiya kick in Yokohama?
It was.
Yeah, that ended up being a big deal, and I think part of a story that's going to continue through 2024. Wasn't it on that one? That was like in a 6-man tag underneath.
Was it on the Muto show?
It was the no contest. Yeah, it was Kiyomiya and Inamura versus Okada and Makabe. And
because he wrestled Kiyomiya on the Muto show, didn't he? He wrestled. That was a singles match in that one. Yeah.
No, he didn't wrestle him. He buried him.
Yeah, right. But again, those were very early chapters of a very long story. I think we're coming back to that.
Oh, absolutely. Assuming Okada is still there,
that story's not going away.
They got to, but they did. I was a little bit bummed that Okada kind of pivoted away from the like old man yells at clouds, yells at young lions.
Man.
Because it's such a good like character, and he totally kind of pivoted away from it from the G1 on, and I was a little bit bummed that wasn't just kind of the through line throughout the whole year. But my bet is they had the Danielson match set up, and that was they didn't want to get too deep into that story, and obviously I think it's going to come back here. But the on the Wrestle Kingdom in Yokohama, the Noah Wrestle Kingdom, all the LIJ versus Congo best of 5 matches were really, really fun. Cool to see.
Yes.
Great that both companies took that feedback that, the multi-mans the year prior didn't really trip the trigger, and they did a bunch of singles matches with kind of a long-standing purpose. So that was neat. Other than that, January was pretty low key. New Beginning in Nagoya ended with the King of Pro Wrestling title match between Shingo and Great Khan, the MMA rules match, which was not good.
No, it was not.
Yeah, it was not good. And then the rest was really just road to. So yeah, I mean, January is always all about Wrestle Kingdom, and maybe you dip your toe into that New Beginning tour. I do find it a little bit interesting that they're not doing the official Noah crossover this year, but they're giving a lot of talent to the Noah the New Year show. So that is sort of serving that same purpose, but
the
Noah gets to own
Wrestle
it.
Kingdom, the Noah New Year final road to Wrestle Kingdom.
Yeah, but Noah gets to own that and probably take in the funds for it this year. So maybe this was the plan all along. So that'll be a fun show.
We did get this before we move on Okada. We saw a couple different iterations of Okada, because at the beginning of the year he was Inoki 3.0 Okada, where he was quite literally doing Inoki, saying at the end of the shows, positioned as the Inoki of the company and everything. And then he just got to be cranky old man Okada, which I agree with you. I loved it. I thought it was great.
It was one of my favorite things.
And it reminded me of his, in a different form of his super cocky persona when he first came back from Excursion. And he was, the original Rainmaker was kind of a snot. Because he was in contrast to Nakamura, in contrast to Tanahashi and things. So when we brought that back, we're like, who are these punks? The obvious thing is, well, dude, that's you. that's you all those years ago. And now all of a sudden you don't like it. That's a very relatable story right there. But they did pivot away from him being Inoki, and they kind of let that go. That whole thing of they didn't have him do the big saying at the end, the big, H&E Sanda. But he was literally doing Inoki for a while there. And then I think they just kind of backed off of that and went with that whole story with Narita and Umino. So we've seen a few different Okadas this year. We'll see what they settle on in 2024. So.
Yeah, so moving on to February, we had the New Beginning in Osaka, we had the Battle in the Valley, and then we had the CMLL Fantastica Mania Tour. Battle in the Valley the New Beginning had the let's see what we had here. We had Okada and Shingo Takagi in their match. We had Tamatonga defeating El Phantasmo in the open weight. And then we had what I thought is probably one of the more noteworthy things. Hikuleo defeated Jay White in the Loser Leaves Japan match, followed by Battle in the Valley, where Jay White lost a Loser Leaves New Japan in general match to Eddie Kingston. So this is important, because we've never really had a resolution between AEW and New Japan about the relationship between Jay White and David Finlay. And I think that is absolutely intentional to protect David Finlay's status as the preeminent leader of Bullet Club worldwide, whereas they can position Jay White as Bullet Club in AEW. Am I reading that right? Or do you guys get a different read on that?
I've never really sure. I've never been really sure where that stands. It does feel like there has to be some sort of unfinished business, just because, Finlay clocked him with the shillelagh, but then since then, like, Jay White hasn't really seemed to mind all that much. It hasn't really been part of any storyline. So I don't know. Sometimes I feel like it's been dropped. and they've just kind of moved on to different things. And, they booked themselves accidentally, I think. Well, not accidentally, they did it on purpose, but I think they thought Jay was going to WWE. So when they had the whole idea that he's out of New Japan, they booked themselves into a place where Jay can't really come back and try to get revenge on Finlay. Finlay would have to go to AEW, and I don't know if AEW is particularly interested in Finlay, and now all of a sudden that gets complicated. So I think the way they booked themselves into the corner with Jay is out of New Japan, it kind of leaves that hanging right now. Unless Finlay goes to AEW or they come up with some plot twist where Jay wins his way back into New Japan, which they don't normally do. Not that they can't, but they haven't do that much. There's really no mechanism for getting them together.
Well, I think what it really comes down to is that they obviously they don't always close the door on guys that are leaving that way. And I don't think that was political. I think it's mostly just booking.
Yeah.
It was a way to get to these couple of matches and to give Hikuleo a moment, to give Eddie Kingston, the story with Eddie Kingston, some finality with Jay, because they had been going back.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I lost Chris for a second there. But
Okay.
the story with Eddie and Jay was going back and forth. But it kind of pivoted, it then became Finley's permission for Jay White to return to New Japan, which was always a thing that I thought was somewhat interesting on that. Chris, are we back?
I think I'm back.
Okay, I think you're back too. I'm going to let you I'm going to finish your thought because I don't know if I had your thought right.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the booking lended itself to what they did. But I do think what it really creates is a bigger shock value if right? I'm going to use the word if Jay White ever steps back into a New Japan ring or a New Japan arena. I think it creates another level of excitement because somehow he's back, right? And it's pro wrestling, right? This isn't Cody not being able to challenge for the AEW title because he is so hell-bent on sticking to a stip, right? Like Jay White could work New Japan, right? Does he want to? I don't know. I mean, he seems happy, he seems successful, but if he ever drops back in, the crowd will go nuts. So you kind of have that around if it's an option. I don't really know what that relationship looked like. So I mean, he kind of went out again similarly. I mean, people at New Japan like David Finlay, like Jay White likes David Finlay. So if nothing else, it was an avenue to get Finlay into that role. I mean, so.
And if they do manage to work out a thing where he just comes back for one special show, the idea of Jay White coming in as a babyface to try to get at Finlay would be huge. I mean, the crowd would pop like crazy as Jay White as a babyface. Yeah,
it'd be massive because Jay White, as Bullet Club leaders go, he was as over as any of them when it comes down to it.
He was as over as Kenny as a babyface,
without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt. I think the audience really, really liked Jay, and he never got caught up with the House of Torture bullshit. Like he was really, he stayed his own lane. And you know what? That's honorable in pro wrestling. And he still stays in his own lane. He does his thing. He knows his character. He is that person. And, so I was upset and bummed with how it kind of ended. I wish it would have ended bigger. Hikuleo and Eddie Kingston are not exactly the guys I would have put, but it was the stories that he was telling at that moment. And sometimes you just got to go with what you got.
All right.
Yeah. We went to March, had the New Japan Cup. We all know the story of the New Japan Cup. Sonato left LIJ, joined just 4 guys to make just 5 guys. Finlay ascended to the head of Bullet Club. Any other stories from March that seem noteworthy in our path? Strong Style formed with Ren Narita, Desperado, and Minoru Suzuki around the same time when Narita was basically hunted by them to join, convinced to join, compelled. You would give it a shot.
Yeah, that didn't really go anywhere.
No. Whatever happened with that? Out of that, of course, we know what's happened with Narita, and he's been a major part, and they had a big long-term thing for him. Desperado's in this featured match. Suzuki becoming, lovable murder grandpa this year was interesting. Is that he's just flat out almost Hantai babyface, his whole thing with Nagata, although I do like that at the end, he and Nagata still don't like each other. Like I still can't stand you. We'll work together. We'll shake hands, but piss off after that. It's too good. They can't, those two, it would look weird if those two were buddies after all this time, but I did enjoy seeing them both going at each other again and then teaming. Interesting year for Suzuki. This is just the story he told throughout the whole year of him coming around to being the downright cuddly toward the end in some ways right there.
You're getting US Suzuki in Japan now.
Yeah, a little bit. And of course, he got very experimental over the course of the year. He had some, what was it? There was a wrestling match on a playground where he was on a swing and drop kick somebody. He wrestled somebody on the Shinkansen. He's just living his best life right now. He's doing whatever he wants.
So Sonata wins the New Japan Cup. We move on to Sakura Genesis, where Mercedes Moné had a match with Azumi and Hazuki. Aussie Open won the IWGP Tag Team titles when they
what could have been.
Right, they defeated Bishamon, and then Sonata defeated Okada in 26-58 for a legendary title run beginning here and there.
Yeah, and this is when everyone was like, "Oh, okay, Sonata's getting his token. He can be a challenger at any time later." Reign, and here he is, still holding the title.
Yeah, it when it happened for me, I thought that the first thing we lost Chris here briefly. We'll bring him back on, but what got me about this one, it is the first thing that set me off the path of Will Ospreay winning G1, which I thought was what was going to happen at the beginning of the year. I just thought, oh wait, no, it's Naito. I thought that we would eventually get to Naito and Sonata off that because it's the only story. Big time story they could tell coming off Sonata just leaving LIJ the way he did. He's going to have to work his way through LIJ and then eventually get to Naito. So that one threw me off and set us on the trajectory there because I thought Ospreay was going to win G1 at the beginning of the year. That's what I predicted. And then when Sonata ended up beating Okada, I just thought, oh, okay, it still could be, but it also might be Naito. They might be just going with Sonata and Naito at the Dome to give it to that way, and that's how it's turned out. But legendary title reign, we'll have to see. It's been spotty at best and that way, but I think with the destination is going to be worth it to get it back to Naito for that last run.
Around this time that we started getting vignettes, those little images about an invasion in Japan, about the monster, the thing, and we will touch on that, but that was probably one of the most formative moments in New Japan as we get towards that. But before then, we got Capital Collision, where Aussie Open won the strong titles, and that is basically the most important thing that happened there. Moving on, let's see, April. Anything else that you guys can think of in April that happened? We had Tatsumi no Kuni, we had Road to Wrestling Dungtaku events, but I'm just going to jump to Dungtaku. Let's see what we had going on there.
Okay.
Looked like we had Hikuleo defeating Kenta for the strong openweight title. Wrestling Dungtaku began one of the best title reigns in 2023. Do you know what title reign I speak of?
How was that?
It was
what am I looking
Chaos, Kazuchika Okada, and Tomohiro Ishii.
Oh, yeah.
And Hiroshi Tanahashi defeated El Desperado, Minoru Suzuki, and Ren Narita for the never openweight six-man titles at this event.
Yeah, I got to say, that turned out a lot better than we kind of probably initially thought. That's
been a hell of a run.
Yeah, it has been a strong run. Yeah, they've had good matches. They've had interesting ones against interesting opponents. I've enjoyed that reign.
Yeah, and that was one that I was like, you saw the result happen, and I was kind of like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. Like, sure, let's do that. But at the time, I was like, oh, they're going to defend it Forbidden Door.
Okay,
right?
Yeah.
It was close enough. It was like, oh, okay, they're gonna do something neat with these three big guys and 3 AEW guys, and we're gonna have a kick-ass trios match at Forbidden Door, and it's gonna keep everyone else out of the way. Because at the time, I don't think by the time this match had happened, like that was my first thought, and then very shortly thereafter, I think we knew the Danielson match was on the table. So that was a fleeting moment for me, but I remember as I was watching this live, my thought was, oh, cool. That'll be a ridiculous match at Forbidden Door for some sort of trio to get all these guys onto the card, but didn't pan out that way, which is fine. But ultimately this was a pretty good show. We had Sonata and Takahashi, Hiromu on top. In a match that you knew Hiromu wasn't going to win, but it was good. And it started Sonata kind of buzzing through some of the LIJ or former LIJ associates. So that I think, is still a story that they're telling. So that's been the long-term story. Save for one who has still not gotten a shot,
that box not been checked yet.
One box not checked, and maybe it gets checked after the dome.
And I'm just looking at some comments here, and
hit them up.
We've got some love for Old Man Okada, but also Shingo versus Okada was a great main event that I think I slept on, according to Dunstan. Catch 22 against Doki and Kanemaru. Yeah, that was a hell of a match.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that was terrific. And then Dunstan says Hiromu in the Leo Junior War. Well, Leo Rush was excellent when he was there too.
He had a heck of a run the whole time he was there, including last year's Dome where he he Crimson Masked.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
unintentionally.
Right. Yeah, that's true. So the fortuitous juice, as Dusty used to say. Flaming Shark with some love for Jay White. He said he's in contention for my favorite wrestlers. So many amazing talents. It is hard to narrow down. And some love for Sakura Genesis. Dunstan says Sakura Genesis was a fantastic show that felt like it was what the company needed to get back into form.
That was probably my show of the year.
It was excellent. And the best IWGP champion of all time, Sonata. Seriously, though. Yeah, I was hoping you were kidding. Sakura was fantastic. The IWGP women's tag and world title match is all fantastic. And then the next one, we're about to get into that one, Dunstan, because we're not too far away from the monster hitting Tokyo that was debuting it at Dominion. So
the rest of May had two events that were pretty important. One was the Best of the Super Juniors, which I'll get to, but first was the Strong Resurgence show that happened. This was important for a number of reasons. Kenta defeated Hikuleo by countout. I referenced this in the interview with Hikuleo last week. This was the match where he went over the rafters and he lost by countout. And I asked him why he was so crazy. This is the reference to that match. We had Will Ospreay defeat Hiroshi Tanahashi in the IWGP United States Heavyweight Title #1 contendership because he did not have the title at the time. And then this was also the night that Willow Nightingale defeated Mercedes Moné, and Mercedes broke her ankle.
That was the main event, actually, too.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, at Walter Pyramid, too. So, one of the bigger New Japan. I mean, this was really what New Japan wanted to do in the U.S. They wanted to feature someone like Mercedes Moné. Again, we all know how it panned out. It's disappointing at best. So, but, I think the cool move is that Willow won. I think that was surprising. I love a surprise finish in a main event. So, my
main frustration was that it wasn't capitalized upon after.
Sure. Well, I think with a company that has a very steady hand booking, when you pivot like that and no one really knew you were going to do it, there is no plan. You kind of have to leave things in the hands of Tony Khan then, right? Because Willow was his wrestler. So that's kind of how it all happened.
Well, yeah, and then I think they were headed toward Julia and Mercedes anyway. So I thought what the idea was, well, we'll put the belt on Julia, and then it'll just be we'll flip champion and challenger once that match finally happens. And then Mercedes, who knows if that's ever going to happen, because the way the dominoes have fallen, she's hurt for a lot of the year, and then just as she's not too far away from coming back, Charlotte gets hurt for 9 months, and I think that could have a big impact on how things turn out. So
I haven't really thought about that.
Yeah, well, they need it now. They need someone to team up with Bayley when Damage Control turns on her. So I don't know. I'm not trying to
speculation corner over here.
Yes, it is. But again, the dominoes fall.
You may not be wrong.
We'll see what happens. Anyway,
so we got to the Best of the Super Juniors, which led to the semifinals. The final four of the Best of the Super Juniors were Master Wato defeating Mike Bailey and Teton defeating El Desperado, which then led to Master Wato defeating Teton and then going on to face Hiromu Takahashi.
Teton.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Teton beating El Desperado in that semifinal match was my shock of the year.
Yeah. Blew me away.
It was kind of one of those all right, cool. They're giving Teton a little shine. This is great. And then he won, and I was like, wait, the what? Because I thought the story was Wato and Despy. And I thought that would have been a great final too, but Teton got over throughout that tournament. I doubt this was a pivot, but I think maybe they gave him the chance to get over. And he did. And then the Despy match was fantastic. One of my favorite matches of the year. And then the final was even a level up from that. Anyone who slept on Best of the Super Juniors, because often that happens without the really big stars, right?
Mm-hmm.
Best of the Super Juniors every year is the one of the highlights of the year. Everything is easy to watch, clean. It's usually, there's very little BS. There's no evil, like there's show, right? Shows in there. Like you've got some of that, and that's pro wrestling. Like you can't get away from it. But a great tournament this year. Really underrated, I think. And you saw guys like Dan Maloney. I believe he was still Dan Maloney at that point.
Yes. Oh, I know when it changed.
Yeah. So I mean, you had a lot happening in that tournament, and the junior division in New Japan right now is so strong that I think this and then Junior Tag League later in the year were both tremendous tournaments. Really, they showed up and showed out, and I think we're going to see that again at Wrestle Kingdom.
I just think that out of that, it's worth mentioning that I think Mike Bailey is my favorite New Japan wrestler who's not a New Japan wrestler. That's my favorite guest. My guy, every time. There's something special with that guy every single time. That all those great matches we've seen this year, and that Zack Sabre Jr. match he had at Lone Star Shootout, and I was thrilled that I was there in person for it. Boy, that one blew the doors off the place. That was a fantastic match, and every time that guy goes in the ring, it's special, no matter who he's with. He's a New Japan guy. He's a New Japan guy.
He should be spending a lot. Well, and I think the relationship's good, so I think we'll see more of him. But hopefully, I agree.
Next, Jeremy.
June brought us Dominion, and it brought us Forbidden Door. Let's start with Dominion first. That seemed like an okay show. We had Will Ospreay defeating Lance Archer for the United States Heavyweight title.
Oh, yeah, in the opener.
The opener. Los Ingobernables de Japón defeated just 5 guys in an 8-man tag match. IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team title match, Catch 2-2 with Dan Maloney, defeated the Jet Setters of Kevin Knight and Kushida for a title change. It was here that Dan Maloney turned on them.
There you go.
Yes.
So, Zack Sabre defeated Jeff Cobb for the World Television title.
This is when we knew that the TV title wasn't actually for young dudes.
Yeah.
No. Or going to be defended in towns that you don't normally see.
Right? Yeah. Like
all the stuff they said.
We love Jeff Cobb. Don't get me wrong. He's not in his 20s. Like, that's just a fact.
No, he's not.
And after the first of several Mark Davis injuries this year, the IWGP Tag Team and Strong Openweight Tag Team title 3-way tornado match with Bishamon defeating House of Torture and the United Empire. We then had the Never Openweight title match in which David Finlay with his entourage of Alex Coughlin, Clark Connors, Dan Maloney, Gabriel Kidd, and Ghetto defeated El Phantasmo.
I still insist, by the way, Katsuyori Shibata is the Kaiser Soze of New Japan. Everybody he touches goes bad. I'm telling you that someday he's going to be revealed as the big
Shadow Cabal at the dojo.
Some of those guys have talked about that now in character. Character that they hated it. Now that Ren Narita's turned and pretty much the whole gang, right? They're all in Bullet Club now. Well, save for a few, but they have kind of canonized it that Shibata actually they hated doing all the Shibata workouts and trying to become the wrestler. So listen, as they should use it, right? Especially now that he's, he's essentially gone from New Japan, which I do think is a shame, but I think it's, it's the liability situation and it's just something New Japan's not willing to risk. And I want to see Katsuyori Shibata wrestle. So if that means AEW, that's fine, right? So be it. But I do think
it's also worth noting that he did go into business for themselves on one of their big shows. With
that's
really upset him.
That's the rumor, right? I don't think no one's ever confirmed that.
Okay, fair enough.
But the writing does seem to be on the wall. For that to have happened, just considering what's happened since. I mean, if you want to connect if you want to connect those dots are very close together.
It could have been an Eddie Gilbert moment there for.
All right, I'm going to throw the last 3 matches at you in a 1, 2, 3 shot, and you can talk about it if you will for a few. We got Hiromu Takahashi defeating Master Wato in 19 minutes 50 seconds. We had Okada, Ishii, and Tanahashi defeating the Blackpool Combat Club of Castagnoli, John Moxley, and Shota Umino in
Good
20
match.
minutes and 38 seconds. And then we
Very
had
good.
Sonata defeating Yota Tsuji. I know you have thoughts, gentlemen. Have at it.
Yeah. Well, and Dunst says Gene Blast had a memorable debut, and of course, has no one realized what Gene Blast sounds like? Yes, we know. We know,
and they know.
We all know.
Yeah, they know too. They know
everybody,
too.
Everybody knows, and you know what? Good on them. They're
Sure.
rolling with it. Yeah,
we're being winked at a little bit there.
I mean, you got Moxley coming out with a shirt that says 0 fucks. So I mean,
and they're leaning hard into the edgy.
They know what they are allowed to sell versus what's allowed to sell in the U.S. So they're gonna roll with it.
Well, do you remember back in the day when they told people not to cuss? That's over with.
Mm-hmm.
that's over with.
That's been over. That's been over since.
I do think this was the best Master Wada match that I've ever seen against Hiromu Takahashi.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And the thing about it is, everyone knew. Well, you didn't give Master Wato much of a chance to win, but he showed up, and that's all he could do in that moment. I mean, he really did have a big May to June kind of glow up.
Yeah,
he did. I thought the Blackpool Combat Club match was the first hint that this openweight 6-man title reign could be something special. And it has been, and so I'm very happy that it's been a bright spot in the New Japan 2023 calendar.
This was the match I kind of hoped. I mean, something like it could have been the Forbidden Door match if you didn't have other things lined up for some of these guys. I mean, like, I don't think anyone would have been disappointed with that.
This was better than Anarchy in the Arena.
I mean, most things are.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying.
No, I agree. I agree with Chris. I'm not a big fan of those things, but it was.
They were a week apart, and this was just a better match than the Anarchy Arena match.
Yeah,
which half the guys were in it.
Yeah, and then Tsuji, the thing about Tsuji, that big debut, and I think a lot of people felt let down that he didn't just go over because of the way that he was debuted, I guess history will tell us eventually later, but. They had a long-term idea for Tsuji that didn't involve him beating Sonata. It was strange to bring him in and then beat him right away, and then didn't get a lot of key wins early on in his career at all. So it was strange to debut him like that, and then his first couple months of his career, it was a bit odd. I won't argue with it. Won't argue with people who do criticize that, but in that moment of Dominion, when he first made himself known, and then the entrance at Dominion was pretty damn exciting.
I just love highlighting someone who's coming back, right? You're not just tossing them back in. You're not pre-announcing it. I think Tsuji could have been Danielson, could have been anyone, right? For those vignettes and all that. But yeah, I love to throw one of the new guys or one of your own into a really highlighted spot. And he's the only one that's come back that's really gotten that. I guess Shota Umino sort of got it, at the end of 2022 as well. But not with a IWGP World Heavyweight title match that ended up being great.
Yeah, and that was the thing. Like the first couple minutes when he hit her first couple of moves, the Fosbury flop, a couple other things that he did, everyone was just like, "Oh my god!" Like this is not the young lion that we remember seeing when he was here, and he was good as a young lion, but it was evident how much he had picked up in Mexico and in England, and that he has a charisma to him that is very interesting, and I think he's going to be a big player throughout 2024 and then long beyond that. They've got something special with him, and really all the Three Musketeers. I love that they're all very different, and really there's 4 of them because I think Uemura is right in there. That Three Musketeers thing is like the old administration's thing, and I think there's 4 of them. I think there are.
I think there's like 6 of them.
Well, Fujita is
Fujita, Oiwa. I mean, like really, all these guys are.
The come up is going to be bright for.
They are making some. They are making some marks for sure.
Fujita might end up being the best junior since Despy and Hiromu. Like he might be better than the guys that have come since. Maybe, and then there are some good ones. That's not a knock on anybody that's been since, but he's really good. If
he slows down his bulk, I mean, he's pretty cut. If he grows an inch or two, he's a heavyweight. Because heavyweight's not a weight class; it's a height class in New Japan.
That is true. Yeah.
We'll touch on Forbidden Door, but it's kind of the bizarro world of New Japan booking for one night. We had MJF defeating Hiroshi Tanahashi in an AEW World Title match.
That sucks.
Owen Hart Foundation tournament quarterfinal. CM Punk defeated Satoshi Kojima.
Which is the one that sucked?
Oh, that was great.
Sonata and Perry. Is that what you're talking about?
What's that?
What did you say? I'm sorry. Which was the one that
Punk
sucked?
defeated Satoshi Kojima.
I thought MJF and Tanahashi was kind of a lame.
No,
match.
that was not good at all. No, it wasn't good at all.
But Punk and Kojima,
like he was hurting. You could watch.
I predicted that.
Like,
that was my sleeper pick. When we were doing the preview for that, I just said Kojima and Punk are going to be great.
Like, that was great. And honestly, Punk got a elbow to the balls, and I mean, Kojima is just the perfect person for that to happen because he's so subtly funny
about it.
Yeah, like, and he's like, everyone loves him. What's not to like? Yeah, and it's just like, and eventually, like, I don't even think he realized he did it until he saw it on Twitter like 3 days later, and then he was like, "Oh, I'm very sorry," or whatever. Like it's just like
maybe
couldn't
we
have happened
together.
But you know what? Getting hit in the balls couldn't have happened to a better guy.
We were all Satoshi Kojima for a moment.
All right, we got the international title match. Orange Cassidy defeated Garcia, Shibata, and Zack Sabre Jr. We had the IWGP World Heavyweight title match in which Sonata defeated Jack Perry. One of the only two matches in which New Japan won cleanly in this, with no AEW talent winning on the side. We had a 10-match.
Well, Ospreay wasn't an AEW talent at the time.
No, I'm saying those were the only two. Like Sonata and Ospreay were the only New Japan winners that were like singles matches. The rest was all AEW winning.
That was the show though where I started. I always doubted Sonata as a world champion, and I said I don't know. I mean, upper mid card absolutely, but world champion. And that match with Jack Perry kind of convinced me because to show up on that show in that situation and come up that small, Perry is not great. I'm not trying to make it up. He didn't have a
London.
He didn't have a well.
We might have.
We don't have time.
Come on.
We don't have time to get into that shit. But
spooky.
Oh god. Yeah, I know. But the thing about Perry, he's not great in the ring, but he's good. But but for Sonata to just kind of there and just kind of lay a boring egg like that was when I thought, I'm not sure this is the right spot for the guy. I don't know if you're the world champion here.
I think that think about it this way. The perception of Sonata as the champion equals Tony Khan's willing to book him against Jack Perry.
Yeah.
And no one higher, right? And yes, Jack Perry had just come off of the Four Pillars Double or Nothing match, which was really good. And it doesn't necessarily mean, but where he is kind of in the, the scale of AEW, this was the level that Tony Khan was willing to put someone in the ring to lose to. So that's the Western perception of Sonata as a champion. And
it's also
all there is to it.
It's also fair to point out that Tony Khan still thinks it's 2017, 2018.
Without a doubt. And
I don't think he's watched anything since because it's Suzuki and Tanahashi. I'm like, dude,
and you know what? He's a busy guy. Like, don't get me wrong. I don't think he's watching Road to Dontaku. And that's okay.
Yes,
but I don't know that would change where you would put Sonata in the kind of scale of things either.
No.
And which is, it's unfortunate, but the truth. Yeah.
All right. So we got
Flaming Shark. Jack Perry is like the Sonata of AEW, but nowhere near as good of a wrestler. So pairing him was a nothing burger.
That's true.
That's a good point.
We had the Elite with Adam Page, the Jacksons, the Young Bucks. Eddie Kingston and Ishii defeated Castagnoli, Boxley, Yuta, Takeshita, and Shota Umino. We had Tony Storm defeating Willow Nightingale. We had Will Ospreay defeating Kenny Omega in 39 minutes 50 seconds. We had Darby Allin, Sting, and Naito defeating Minoru Suzuki and Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara. And then we had Bryan Danielson defeating Kazuchika Okada. I'm not going to say it now. I didn't like that Bryan Danielson versus Kazuchika Okada match.
Well, the injury happened and they weren't able to do the closing bit. That was the one thing. There wasn't the drama because they couldn't do all the near falls and the big moves because his arm was busted and they just had to do what they could do. So they had to throw almost everything out the window. So imagine that some of the best stuff that Okada does are those big move twist and turn near falls, and just Danielson suddenly wasn't physically capable of doing it, so they just kind of had to go home. Hopefully all that'll get fixed on Thursday.
It's not what I would consider the worst wrestling match that I saw of the year, but it was my least favorite, if that makes sense. I was so deflated by that match. It really,
I would call it one of the most disappointing matches for me personally.
Yeah, I also think the pivot was awful. I think, and I've said this everywhere I've been today. This is not today, yesterday, whenever, this whole week. Like, everyone's talking about Danielson and Okada, of course, because that's the kind of Western, offer match for this year's Wrestle Kingdom. And I thought that their first match, I don't think they could have a worse match than they did, because the pivot and how they handled the injury, or really how Danielson handled the injury, it felt so panicked, and it didn't feel very natural. It felt like he was panicked about communicating. So he created a space for himself to communicate, which I get it. That doesn't change that if I suspend my disbelief that match sucked. So that's all there is to it. So once I know, obviously I know what happened. I have sympathy for wrestlers and injuries, and I get it. Like, I understand intellectually what happened. That doesn't change that if I was watching it as if it were real, it was not entertaining. And it was kind of off-putting and really kind of, I don't know. It left a bad taste in my mouth. And I hope that I don't doubt that the way that match ended is the reason they're doing Danielson and Okada again at the Dome, because they've got to wash that taste out of the mouths.
Yeah. All right. So we then moved on to the Independence Day shows. Some of the noteworthy things that happened here was Bullet Club War Dogs defeated Bishamon to win the Strong titles here. Clark Congress and Jerome Maloney won the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag title here. And then Jun Kasai made his New Japan debut alongside El Desperado to defeat Homicide and Moxley on night 1 of the Strong Independence Day tour. And then on night 2, Julia defeated Willow Nightingale for the Strong Women's title reign. Bishamon defeated the War Dogs to retain the IWGP Tag Team titles. This is where Eddie Kingston defeated Kenta for his Strong Openweight title reign. And John Moxley defeated El Desperado here in also one of my favorite matches of the year.
Yeah, and I know that you and I don't quite agree on that one, just because I hate death matches, and nothing I saw out of
I hate death matches too, but something about it was just like, if they did it, at least they made it entertaining.
Yeah, and Moxley is good. I like Moxley. I just hate death matches, so it's just one of those things that it's not going to be to my taste right there. So, but yeah, I mean, there was some news out of that brought us the Eddie Kingston thing and the Julia thing. So yeah.
I thought these shows were really fun because the crowds in Korakuen were like chanting like they were in America.
A little bit, yes, yeah.
So and cheering and doing things very Americanized. Did
we get that? Was like a "This is awesome" chant, which does not happen in Japan, but we got one there.
Exactly. Yeah. So like, and I thought that was really, it's very charming, I guess, and I love that that means that fan base was paying close enough attention to kind of know what they could bring to the show. And with that said, I think it was really fun. And I think just bringing Strong, the brand, to Korakuen and then seeing the reaction, I think was really promising. Ironically, it was almost like it was a swan song for Strong, because we haven't really seen that level of attention or energy around those shows since, but it was a cool, fun, 2-night event. It got some of my friends over there. It got Ian Riccaboni into Japan and into Korakuen Hall, which I thought was just some neat stories for some of these guys who had spent all that time, doing the pandemic era Strongs and then really trying to help build that brand in America. And it was almost like a nice hat tip to that whole group.
Flaming Shark says the show felt different and Korakuen was hot. I'd love them to do Independence Day again next year at Korakuen, whether one night or two. Yeah, we'll have to see how it turns out. It depends on what the plans is for Strong. But if they're keeping Strong around, then I think it might be healthy. I think it might be healthy because it was a different crowd. Yeah.
I will definitely say that when you were looking at the Wrestle Kingdom card, those two cards were very consequential to the layout of what matches were set up for
That's
Wrestle
very
Kingdom.
true.
Yeah.
Very, very, very important because we're trying to identify where all these things and how the setup is. Like, in hindsight, those Independence Day cards were pretty important. So we got the G1 after that. We have all talked the G1 to death. One of the most discussed things in the New Japan calendar. So we don't have to do too much on here. We all know Naito won. There were 32 people. There were 8 blocks. 2 people advanced in each one.
It felt like 8, but there were 4
blocks. 8 people in 4 blocks. 2 people advanced in each block. 8 people in the post block play. Came down to Naito. He's facing Sonata. What was there other than if you watch the G1, you know the matches that you loved? There were the iconic stories and all that. I will say personally, for me, August was like one of the most personally difficult months. So for as much fun as G1 was, it was a distraction for some totally stuff that Conway knows about. But we've all probably had stuff going on around that time of just like hard to focus on G1. But man, it was good times, and yeah, it was bittersweet that I had won that G1 bracket thing because I had no opportunity to really focus on it at the time with what was going on in my personal life. Totally bittersweet. Totally.
Well, my match of the year came from the G1, so
sure.
and it does parallel some of what we had sort of just talked about with Danielson and Okada. But my match of the year is Will Ospreay versus Tetsuya Naito in the semifinals of the G1, because I think it was a masterful finish by really both guys, but Will Ospreay. Yeah. And I think that if you compare the two, right, both matches had both that match and Okada Danielson had this kind of catastrophic event happen towards the end. And the way Will Ospreay and Naito handled theirs versus the way Okada and Danielson handled theirs is night and day to me. And the way Ospreay, as the loser of the match, carried Naito by paying deference to him, really, and by giving himself the frickin' Destino, really, when it comes down to it.
He really did. Yeah.
Like that to me was such a beautiful display of what pro wrestling is and what it can be, and how you do it is not a dance. It is something totally different. It is something that you may not have your dance partner along for the ride, but you still have to get your dance partner to where they need to end the dance, you know? So
sometimes collaborative cooperation is the way that I was like trying to describe it.
Totally. And you know, a guy like Ospreay, who has wrestled around the world with all sorts of different people and is familiar with how you can communicate when you don't speak the same language in the context of a wrestling ring. And we all heard it, right? I mean, you go back and listen to the end of that match and you've got Chris Charlton trying to cover for it, but like we all heard it. And it's such a beautiful thing. And I'm sure some people will take it off their list because they went through an injury and potentially a head injury and right? Like, I don't care. I don't care about any of that. To me, this match was quintessentially what the beauty of pro wrestling was right in front of us. And that to me is the difference between the best wrestler in the world, Will Ospreay, and the 1A best wrestler in the world, Bryan Danielson, because Ospreay's got all that experience, still talking, still working with people that he can work with someone who speaks Spanish, who speaks Japanese, and he doesn't have to stop the match because he needs to communicate that he's hurt or that someone's hurt. And I think that is so honorable. And the fact that Will Ospreay didn't even just look at it as an opportunity to get himself over, he looked at it as an opportunity to be sure that he got Naito over in that match. And I think it was incredible. And then Naito carries that over to the G1 final, where he then beats Kazuchika Okada, but sells a head injury for the first little bit of the match and acts all loopy and unstable. And like, I think that's brilliant too. I mean, when life gives you lemons, right, you got to roll with it. And Naito is one of those guys that, you know, he's been actually shoot injured many times, you know, enough times to know how to make a lemonade out of something that probably sucks. So the end of this tournament, we all know the doldrums of the middle of the G1. It's tough, right? If you're trying to watch everything, even if you're just watching the tournament matches, it's a challenge. But I liked the knockout stage this year. I liked that there were a couple rounds of knockouts, and I don't know if that's what I want to see going forward, but I liked it as kind of a novelty this year. I love a classic 2-block, one guy advances G1, but this was fun.
It felt like we had a ballooning roster and a lot of extra people, but I don't know if we're going to have that capacity going forward. You know, if it's down to 2 brackets, or if it's still 4 and it sits instead or something. I just got to see that with the scheduling and all that. I don't know, but it was a fun G1. I don't say it was my favorite G1 of all time, but I think for the matches that you listed in the reasons, like, it gave weight and deference to the Wrestle Kingdom main event, which is ultimately the goal of the G1. So we then went on to Destruction in Kobe, Destruction in Ryogoku, and Royal Quest. So let's go through these.
Yeah, so now we're at the part of the year we can probably buzz through pretty quickly.
Yeah, we remember most of this a little bit easier, so it'll be quick. Bullet Club beat Kevin Knight Tiger Mask. Let's see. Chaos defeated Sho defeated Taichi. Bishamon defeated TMDK. Shingo Takagi defeated Grado Khan. Naito defeated Jeff Cobb for the IWGP Heavyweight Title contendership. And Will Ospreay defeated Yota Tsuji, which was a tremendous match in and of itself. Ryogoku, let's see what we had here. Bullet Club defeated the Jet Setters, Kevin Knight and Kushida. Wato, Umino, and Nagata. It was the final of the best of 7 here, defeating Strong Style. Speaking of Strong Style. This was where the Guerrillas of defeated Bullet Club War Dogs for the Strong Openweight title. Motor City Machine Gun and Josh Alexander fell to the never Openweight 6-man title champions of Tanahashi, Okada, and Ishii. Tama Tonga defeated David Finlay here for the never Openweight title. Hiromu Takahashi defeated Mike Bailey and Yo in Ryogoku, and Sonata defeated Evil to end that.
You know what else that ended? Ryogoku ended Kevin Kelly's time with New Japan.
Oh, man.
So
pour one out for Kevin Kelly.
Pour one out for Kevin. His last match that he called was Sonata versus Evil. And you know what? There's something poetic about that.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, hat tip to Kevin. Obviously, he kind of brought me into this world in a way. But yeah, sad that that's the last match that he will have called, I guess, officially as the voice of New Japan.
Very true.
So, but I like to give him a poke.
I love
about
that little footnote. I don't know why, I just do. All right, so we got Royal Quest 3. Ishimori defeated Robbie X. El Desperado defeated Trent Seven. Yota Tsuji defeated Luke Jacobs, who we might be seeing more of in New Japan in 2024. Bullet Club War Dogs defeated Cameron Kai and Leon Slater. Guerrillas of Destiny defeated Bullet Club War Dogs. Ren Narita and Shota Umino defeated United Empire to tease us of the great tag team that was not to be. LIJ defeated Just 5 Guys. Eddie Kingston, Tanahashi, and Michael Oku defeated United Empire. Shingo Takagi defeated Tomohiro Ishii in an absolutely fantastic match. And then Will Ospreay defeated Zack Sabre Jr. and was also an absolutely fantastic match.
Good finish to that one,
yeah. And the Ospreay hat tip goodbye tour continued.
Yeah. We then went into the Super Junior Tag League, which we all remember how that went with everybody, and we got our matches set for Wrestle Kingdom there. I'll get to that in just 1 second. But we did have an event that Steven went to, the Fighting Spirit Unleashed in Las Vegas. Eddie Kingston defeated Hinare. Shingo Takagi defeated Tama Tonga for an openweight title change, and Julia defeated Hayan. So
that was probably
to tag on those?
Aside from, I guess, Battle in the Valley, that was probably the best US show this year, right?
I would agree with that.
I thought it was a pretty strong show. Really enjoyed that one too.
All I've heard is that the people in the building in Vegas had a great time.
Yes, they did. I'm happy to say that I was among them right there, and that was a really nice. That was a really fun show. I remember that Alex Zane and Lance Archer had a hell of a match. The against I guess that would have been Hikuleo and ELP, in that one, if I'm remembering right. Because I went to that one and I went to Lone Star Shootout, so sometimes I conflate matches.
Lone Star Shootout was the most bizarre card I've seen in New Japan in a while.
It was
with Joey Janela and Toru Yano. That was on there.
Dream match, baby.
Dream match. Although Zack Sabre Jr. versus Mike Bailey was
great.
Pretty tremendous match. And Shingo Takagi and Trent Beretta was did not get enough love and attention, but it was very, very, very good.
That was weird. That was a weird show because I remember sitting there in Las Vegas and when we just seen this really good match where Shingo beats Tama Tonga for the Never Openweight title. The lights go out. Who's going to be the challenger? And Trent Beretta.
Trent
Beretta,
who's a great wrestler,
but just not pushed at all at the moment.
Yeah, but who influences the booking of Strong is Best Friends, baby. So
Best Friends Wrestling.
It's good. It was a good match. It was a objectively good match, but
it was.
Was it exciting? No.
And also had one, and I got to say, Trent, love you, but one of the worst blade jobs ever. Like I have never seen someone just here in front. Let me just unwrap this thing, and now the tab isn't working that I put under. There we go. Now I got a blade. That was what it looked like It was the most blatant thing I'd seen since New Jack. It was rough.
Flaming Shark says Shingo and Trent was cool, just not a main event match.
Yeah.
And Venkin says Mayu and Vector was cool.
See, to me, that was the thing. I got to see Mayu
VSJ in 2024, you cowards. No more will.
I was talking about that with somebody else.
Yeah.
Zach is primed for, a rocket. I don't know if Tanahashi's the right move on the Wrestle Kingdom to get the belt off of him, but I think you got to get the belt off of him so he could go after the big title.
Yeah.
There are a couple of guys like that could.
It's time. It's
now
time.
that we've decompressed all that, we're gonna jump on these things that you brought forth here. End of year statistics series. Number of single match leaders. Zack Sabre Jr. wrestled in 30 New Japan single matches this year. 28 of these matches were tournament or title matches. And Zack Sabre Jr. bolstered his New Japan schedule with 12. Chris, I'm sure you know the rest of this, but these are all your statistics. Thank you for providing them to the world.
Yeah.
Any interesting things that you have to add to this one?
Not that one in particular. But Zach wrestling in 30 singles matches just in New Japan is a lot. And then you kind of add in everything he did outside of New Japan, which was not a small amount. So he's been the guy. He's kind of been the ambassador for New Japan, aside from Ospreay, but Ospreay's kind of representing himself at this point. And Zach, I think, is still carrying the flag.
And of those 30 matches, he won 23 of them.
Yeah. Big. How do you lose, right? When you're the champ, but
yes.
That's huge. And when you look back throughout the years, you got to go all the way back to 2010 where you find someone who won as many singles matches in a calendar year as Zack Sabre Jr. did this year, and you find Satoshi Kojima with 26. And as you go further back into history, you got some guys with like a ton of singles wins, but that's when they were having a ton of singles matches. So to have someone like Zack Sabre Jr. knock out 23 victories in a year just in New Japan is pretty impressive, and I'm really hopeful that is a sign of things to come.
You're looking at this and you got to keep in mind, for people who are listening, not watching, David Finlay has 14 wins. Will Ospreay has 14 single wins. Naito has 14. Okada has 11. And Zack Sabre Jr. has 23. So that's the magnitude in which that's how viable he's been.
Yeah, they did lean on that TV
leaders.
Title.
The Iron Men of New Japan. We got Shingo Takagi with 7 hours, 25 minutes, and 55 seconds. Then the Zack Sabre Jr. with 6 hours, 45 minutes, and 3 seconds. That has a lot to do with the fact that his TV title has a 15-minute time limit.
Yep.
Otherwise, he would be blowing everybody out of the water. Will Ospreay at 6 hours, 36 minutes, 42 seconds. And then Sonata, the flag bearer, is trailing with 5 hours, 57 minutes, and 37 seconds. He gets his business done early as champion.
Well, a lot of Sonata's work was G1, and they changed the G1 time limit to 20 minutes. So that did sort of shrink that down. honestly, this year with Shingo was a light year. He's probably feeling like he relaxed. I mean, in 2021, the man put in 10 hours and 20 minutes of singles match length. So, I mean, that's impressive. Seven and a half ain't nothing to scoff at. But yeah, I mean, that he's the guy, and that's the other thing is Shingo shows up and he gives a lot, and a lot of this happened early in the year. If I'm really remembering correctly, some of these are those long KOPW matches, the long match with Hanare and some of that other stuff. But I mean, that it all counts, right? So I mean, ultimately, like the modern record for singles ring time is 2019 with Will Ospreay at 11 hours and 21 minutes, which was, if you really think about it, was almost as impressive as Will Ospreay's 2023, because he was in every New Japan singles tournament. Like, he's just all over the place. But yeah, I mean, ring time stuff is always fascinating to me because I do think it represents like the true athleticism of these wrestlers. And, Shingo being able to, kind of top this list twice over the course of 3 years is pretty impressive.
I think he's going to end up being like another Ishii, where even where he's just going to be the guy that always gives you a great match. And I think eventually, for the same reasons Ishii got into the Observer Hall of Fame, I think in a few years Shingo will as well. For basically, it's very similar concept. Just a guy that you can always put in, always get a great match, and that's going to be a function that he's going to be very valuable for New Japan for a while.
Absolutely.
All right, now we have the Womp Womp division. The New Japan single match loss leaders in 2023. Coming in a four-way tie, we have Great-O-Khan, Kevin Knight, Yoshinobu Kanemaru, and Bushi. Immediately after that, we have, with 9 losses, and with 8, we have got Kenta, Court Connors, Doki, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and Tomohiro Ishii. There is power in groups, apparently. So what's the takeaway from this other than these are the guys just doing the business?
Yeah, I mean, Okan stands out on this because part of that is you have to have the opportunity to lose 9 singles matches, which is the positive side of that. But the negative side of it is that you're eating a bunch of losses. And for Okan's case, it was, again, mostly during the G1. But he didn't really offset that at any other time of the year. So, it sort of is what it is right now. But I know a lot of people point to Okan as a guy that they hope gets, some sort of push soon. But I don't know that I don't see it. Like, I don't see it in the booking pattern. I see it in the talent. I see it in my enjoyment of him. I see it in his charisma, but in the patterns, I don't see those. I don't see the trajectory for him yet.
The elevation to the next
level.
And
usually you can kind of point to something like, yeah, he lost a bunch, but there's no but right now for Okan.
You're just watching him do the work, or not move anywhere, just run in place.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have made it to our main event, gentlemen, and it's time to hit up the
Wrestle Kingdom card
for the Wrestle Kingdom.
The Rambo is the main event. Nice.
Oh, we're starting at the bottom, guys. we got to make our way to the grand finale the right way. So we got the Rambo starting off. We're gonna have over the top rope, pin, submission, any way to lose this match, and then the final 4 move on to New Year Dash. Is that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the thing. And like I said, if your favorite wrestler is not on this card, they'll be in this match. And we don't know which way they're going to go with it, but I still feel like, Coughlin Kid could be a face that we'll see probably a New Year's Dash in there. They seem like naturals for that. I think there will be a little bit of presence from 2023 in there as well, just try to give it a little bit of legitimacy, whether that's Taichi or whatever, involved in the New Year's Dash match. But I'm hoping kind of Taichi is moving on to other things. I like that this is something that people can do for a year and bring a little bit of variety and then move on to something else. So I think it would be a good way to use the KOPW to bring some of those more, like those Violent Bullet Club guys. I think they could do something interesting with it. That's what I'm hoping for.
I think I'm seeing on this graphic for the first time, that's a different belt up in the top right corner.
Oh, that's not the blue belt?
Oh.
It looks different. I think that looks different. But I mean,
I don't remember the eagle thing on the top.
Right. That's what that's what I mean.
That's interesting.
So maybe they're doing a new belt every year because it's that's kind of how the KOPW works. It was a trophy for a moment, a very adorable trophy.
That thing got trashed, boy.
It was very cute though.
Trophies don't last long with LIJ. Remember, they had to redo the junior heavyweight title because Naito was hazing Hiromu.
I don't think those trophies are made to last in general.
Trophies in pro wrestling don't have a healthy history.
No.
Trophies and cakes, sheet cakes. Bad news in wrestling.
Listen, if it comes
the
out
Rambo
of the cake,
always is the match that I'm like, I hope it exceeds my expectations, but it's usually just there. It's fun, but it's not a Royal Rumble.
The problem with the Rambo is that if you wake up for it, you're gonna have like a 20-minute to half-hour lull. I know you guys are West Coast, right? So you guys are just staying up probably.
No. I'm in Austin. I'm the same.
That's right. You're
Yeah.
So the pain of like waking up, watching the Rambo, and then being like, what do I do for 20 minutes to stay awake?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm gonna lose all momentum. So that's my only real issue with the Rambo. I wish they would just plop it right at the beginning, but it is what it is. That gets people into the building. And it is fun. I just always hope for some sort of fun surprise. And in recent years, the Rambo hasn't really delivered on that. So, and especially with the kind of the clunky ending of the Final Four and all that, like, I don't know. I kind of wish it would move away from that format, but I like just make the Rambo for the KOPW and start it off. I think that would be a better way to go about it. A little bit more of a climax to that match. But it is what it is, and it's ultimately unimportant.
Yeah, fair enough. And let's see. The Flaming Shark just said he'd like to see Coughlin get it. Venkin Bjorn is saying I'm surprised we haven't gotten the Kid Eddie match announced. Maybe tomorrow when Eddie wins Triple Crown. Well, who knows? But they're also just mentioning that they don't.
I could see that.
They wait for shows to happen before they make post Wrestle Kingdom stuff official. So
I could definitely see Kingston and Kid at San Jose or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah, San Jose would be. I think that's where I would plop that, and they'll do it again. They had a good match already, I think. So let's run it back.
So here we go. The junior tag championship. The Francesco Akira and TJP, who is apparently being resurrected after ending up in the coffin in the first ever coffin match in New Japan history against Clark Connors and Drilla Maloney. My thoughts on this one are it could go either way. I mean, either tag team winning would be fine here. I guess the real question is TJP coming back in a new character? Is this going to be some sort of is this going to turn into some sort of gimmick that he I keep hearing rumors, but I would rather not have that so much, but we'll see. It'll be a good match either way because these four are excellent together. So.
And a classic opener for Wrestle Kingdom, right? Yeah. Like this is what you do. You put the junior heavyweight tag titles out for match number 1, and they go balls to the wall, and they walk to the back and say, all right, do your thing. And it's like top us, right? So I love both of these teams though. I think that, and they do, it's not, TJP's been around obviously in various states for a long time, but the other three are some of the future of New Japan. I hope. And, I think they've all got something to prove.
Is Clark the first of the LA Dojo guys to make it to the proper Wrestle Kingdom card?
Yeah, I suppose so, isn't it? Because I mean, because Fredericks never did he?
No. Did Kevin Knight?
I don't think so.
No, because that would have had.
I think this might be it.
Year.
Might be.
I'm not gonna declare it.
I was gonna say I don't want to say that too definitively.
This is the first of those LA Dojo guys to make it to the proper Wrestle Kingdom card, trained under Shibata.
There you go. All right. What's after this one?
Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Zack Sabre Jr.
So I'm more intrigued by when Tanahashi is going to address the crowd as president. I don't know if that could be like leading off the show or whatever, but Tanahashi and Zack, Tanahashi would be a strange choice to be the television champion. Although I totally agree with Chris that it's getting on toward time where Zach goes off and moves up and challenges for bigger titles. But I don't know if Tanahashi's the guy that takes it off.
But my thing is Tanahashi would then be a conduit to get it to Tsuji, Uemura, Narita. I mean, Narita feels like the right play at that point because he's sort of the opposite, and Tanahashi is such a representative of the company now. I mean, not that he wasn't before. Let's be honest. He's always been the ambassador. Sure. But, I think it could get Narita back into that picture, or Narita in a new, or Zach retains and Narita's the challenger too, because, a year later he's a different guy, right? And I think that could be an interesting play too. I would love to see this bounce somehow into that kind of young blood space.
What if the winner of Yuya Uemura and Yota Tsuji got the winner of this match?
I think they're gonna have something else to do.
All right, then.
So. Yeah, the other thing is, I just wanted to point out, this is exactly the right opponent for Hiroshi Tanahashi. He doesn't have to fly. He doesn't have to jump. It can be a lot of stuff on the ground, and it's got even without the 15-minute time limit, Zach is a phenomenal opponent. Well, he's a great wrestler, but Hiroshi Tanahashi can then have a good match where he doesn't have to tax his knees that much. And we've all seen bad knee Tanahashi can be a little painful to watch. This is exactly the right showcase for Tanahashi at this stage, I think.
They've also got such a deep history that there's so much to work with, in the sense of callbacks and in the sense of timing and pacing. Like, they've got 11 singles matches together under their belts, and only 2 are less than 15 minutes. So we're going to get a different match also, which I think is kind of that's a nice kind of hat tip to this like long-standing rivalry too.
All right.
We got, speaking of, Yota Tsuji versus Yuya Uemura, the special singles match that we got here. What do you guys got?
I'm thrilled that this is on the card. Just dropping this match onto the card just like totally changed kind of my vision of this show. So super stoked. I'm stoked that it's Uemura's first singles match, that they held on to that. First singles match since coming back. And obviously Tsuji's been tremendous. So I'm really excited. These guys, again, another really, really, really long history with each other. They started their careers essentially with 21 draws against each other. So if two guys are ever going to know each other in the ring as well as these two, I'd like to see it, because these guys have spent some time wrestling each other very early in their careers, and they're going to be generational rivals. We're going to look back at this match in 5, 10, 15 years when they're doing it again in the Dome at a much higher spot on the card. And we're going to point back to this match and be like, damn, we were there. We were talking about New Japan when these guys were getting their first taste of the Tokyo Dome as proper roster members. So thrilled that they went this direction. I wish they would have gone this direction with Narita and Umino too, but I totally understand trying to get some other guys on the card too. But this is the match I'm most looking forward to, because I think it's going to tell us the most about where we're headed.
Yeah, and the story is the same whichever way they go with it. Whoever beats the other's not. The story is going to be that the other can't sleep at night until they get the win back. Period.
Right.
And so this is the first chapter in a long story. Well, not even the first, but we're early in this book. And but the whole thing is the other one's just going to be driven wild by the fact that they lost to the other. Either way it goes. So I'm up for either one. Let's just have a good one.
Chris, do you get the sense that this match was always planned for Wrestle Kingdom, or that they kind of pivoted to it and made it happen, but it wasn't always going to be this?
This is what I've believed was the path all along for these two. I think Uemura sort of teased, wanting to go through just 5 guys, and that didn't really pan out. And once they didn't really run with that, I think this was the play all along. And then once they started to have some interactions, it was just so clear to me. And I couldn't be more excited, because Uemura is my guy. Like, he's the guy that I put all my chips in with when he was a young lion, and Tsuji is the guy that I've seen grow. So I'm so excited to see them both in these positions to, maybe take the reins. I mean, if you think back to when Okada came back, his first singles match was an undercard Wrestle Kingdom match against Yoshihashi. And then he came out in the Rainmaker Shock and all, and the rest is quite literally history. Are they going to reboot the Rainmaker shock with Uemura? That seems too cheeky. But I'm not ruling it out.
There was a part of me right now that made me think, and there is an outside 5% chance this happens. But the whole Zandikin wanting to be a part of LIJ, but him being like a Yota Tsuji recruit and not a Naito recruit. And if Yota Tsuji were to win this match and he were to potentially be the guy to challenge Naito at the roll call for a match after winning this match, that could harken back to some of that Okada, young gun making an impact after Yoshihashi. And I don't think that would happen, but there's certainly a possibility that the way that the card is laid out that it could.
Yeah.
All right, next one. Woo! Woo!
Yeah, so we have a setup for this one, of course, at the new year as well, where these guys are going to be involved. But Shota Umino, Kaito Kiyomiya, and against Evil and Ren Narita. Of course, all of this is to give us the tease of Umino and Narita. I would imagine that they're going to certainly get their hands on each other. I'd imagine that Narita is going to do everything he can to keep Umino from getting his hands on him for a while and continue to tell that story. I think there are bigger plans ahead for Kiyomiya in New Japan and in more prominent spots than this. So this is reminding us that he's there more than anything else, and keep this guy in mind. But Umino and Narita is going to be one of the major stories of 2024, and I think this is just going to be the little tease. I'd imagine there'll probably be something hook and crook to get the win, probably for the House of Torture group, just to keep them hot and things. But I'm curious to see how Kiyomiya looks in this, and then but I really think we're just going to get teased about Umino and Narita. Do you think so, Chris, or am I reading that wrong?
No, yeah, I think that's the thing to carry over, right? I think that's the long game here. Kiyomiya is this guy, again, you just want to remind that he's around. I don't know what the hell is going on with Kiyomiya. He's working everywhere. He's working Dragon Gate. He's working Noah. He's working New Japan. He's flying to the US when Muto's coming over. He's still, probably hanging out with Keiji Muto. He's playing the field, and, good on him, but he still doesn't really mean anything to me. So I think a lot of people see a lot more in him than I do, and that's fine. I'll see it when I see it. But, I think to me, the story of this match is Umino and Narita. And the shame is that the discourse around this match is going to be about Evil. And that seems silly to me.
Yeah, Flaming Shark says House of Torture has real heat and momentum for once. They probably want to keep them and Narita rolling, since that faction feels like it's really going somewhere for once.
Yeah, when I saw this match get added, I was like, oh, of course. Right? Because you had to get kind of a, not necessarily just Ren Narita, but a House of Torture match onto the card, because
Evil not being on Wrestle Kingdom was a huge glaring omission.
Yeah. So it felt so obvious once it happened, but I think my hope had gotten in the way that we were going to do both of the special singles matches with the four young guys, just as a reboot type thing, or just something to point back to. But either way, I think these are still going to be the kind of this is potentially a little bit of that generational rivalry piece again too. People are saying in the chat, Shota Umino and Ren Narita is very much good versus evil, whereas Tsuji and Uemura are both kind of playing the tweener role. Yeah. So that's kind of your new scale for New Japan, right? Evil is Ren Narita, good is Shota Umino, and everything else happens in between. And I think that's a good scale to play with. You've got a lot to work with.
So you touched on something about how the discourse is going to be about Evil when this match is going to be about Umino and Narita. So I told you about the last match, that 5% probability thing that I thought might happen. This I have more like a 75% probability that I think Evil is winning the match and then challenging Naito afterwards for the IWGP as the first little feud to kind of move forward. I don't want it to happen, but I feel like all the cards are kind of there that it might.
I see. That's not how I see it. I don't think Evil's in. They just did Evil, right? They just did Evil.
They did,
Sonata.
but with Sonata.
I know, but that's enough.
Naito lost the title to Evil in his last week.
Yes.
And he won it back. So I'm curious if they attack that a little bit.
I think there's two options for the end of Wrestle Kingdom Challenger. And this is under the assumption that Tetsuya Naito is the winner, right? I'm not entertaining other options,
right?
For the main event. But I think the two options are the winner of Uemura and Tsuji is the first challenger, or Shingo Takagi is the first challenger.
Interesting.
So because
if he loses the title, you're gonna have him challenge for IWGP.
Yes, because that's exactly what Kenta did in 2020.
That is true. The only other argument that makes sense for either Narita or Evil or someone from House of Torture which would be the only two from House of Torture that could really challenge, is that they would just want that first Naito title defense to be pure babyface Naito with 100% of the crowd behind him against somebody who's like, okay, there's no way that asshole's winning the title, so at least we're going to see our guy Naito get a win here.
Sure.
Before it's before they start dividing the crowd. That's the argument I saw for that did make sense. But there are a lot of options. There are a lot of very interesting options for that first defense.
Your suggestions are far more interesting than Evil, but I feel like Evil is a safe
there's certainly something there. I think that because the main event is not the match, it's the roll call.
Yes.
I think it might make sense for someone who's already in the ring to be the challenger.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. So, and that's where Tsuji and Shingo come into play. And Shingo's the only guy that didn't get a shot at Sonata.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Very interesting.
Speaking of Shingo.
Hey.
There he is. This match wasn't on my radar for the Never Openweight title. And I'm not sure it was on New Japan's either. It was it's one of those things, Chris, that for weeks, maybe weeks might be an exaggeration, but for a while out in post-match comments, Shingo and Yota Tsuji openly talked about teaming together for World Tag League. And that's not usually something that happens by accident. It's not usually that the guys are going into business for themselves. And then suddenly they were talking about that for a while. Like, oh, well, Tsuji and I, World Tag League. And Tsuji would come on and he just, it's Shingo and I. And then it suddenly goes to Shingo winning this thing from Tama Tonga in Las Vegas. Zandokan comes in, not complaining about Zandokan.
That was great.
Yeah, he was terrific. But I'm just going right back to Tama Tonga and Shingo Takagi, which had just happened in Vegas here in the Dome. It's the whole Never Openweight title trajectory this year has been seems to just be a series of zigs and zags more than a straight line to me anyway.
Agreed. I was surprised that this is where they headed. I was surprised that Shingo wasn't on World Tag League for all the same reasons. I think there's two things that may be at play here. Either there's some sort of situation where we had to get someone in this match onto the card because of something contractual or just, cost efficiency, or there's some sort of plan for the post match. Some sort of plan that they have access to someone to make an appearance at Wrestle Kingdom that's not a match. So, whether that affects Tama Tonga or Shingo Takagi, I'm not sure, but you gotta figure by the end of this match or by the end of the show, at least, you understand we have some understanding of why they went back to this match. And if we don't, then I have to believe that it's something totally behind the scenes that just doesn't necessarily add up to something on screen.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, and it could be just a flat out angle alert. So we'll see.
It could be on this joke a couple of times, but this is like the true end of the G1 with the C block here. As it's gone over and over and over, and it has to end before the main event of Wrestle Kingdom.
It might be one of those situations where it's something big for Shingo afterwards, and it's someone interesting, or Tama, I guess. But I mean, I think Shingo is probably the more interesting man at play there. And they were just like, all right, well, let's bounce it over to Shingo. We'll do a rematch at Wrestle Kingdom, and then boom, whatever the situation is what it is. Like I said, I hope after this match or after the show as a whole, we understand why they went this direction. And oftentimes with New Japan, that is how it works.
Yeah, I would not break my heart if Nakajima came out and challenged after that. Just saying, just wouldn't break my heart.
And the two of the 1-2 punch of Gorillas of Destiny, we got Hikuleo and El Phantasmo against Hiroki Goto and Yoshihashi for the IWGP Tag Championship and the Strong Openweight Tag Championship. This is not a merging of the titles.
Yeah, I was gonna say, though, not a unification, unfortunately.
Not a merging. They'll just be walking around with 2 titles each, much like other tag champions and other promotions that are on TV do so from time to time. So I'm looking forward to this one. We had these guys on the show last week. It was a totally fun interview. Please check that out if you get a chance in our archives. But what do you guys have thoughts about this?
I was going to say, all I can really say is if you saw the World Tag League final, how can you not be generally excited for this match? Because that was such a tremendous match. And they really put themselves on the radar as a great, collaborative, foursome here. So, but we know they're not going to get that much time. I mean, they broke records.
Yeah, they're not getting 40 minutes.
They're not getting 40 minutes, right? Maybe you get 20, but probably you're getting 15. Yeah. But I think, Bishamon is about as good as you can get as a tag team. And I'm a massive fan of El Phantasmo. And I think Hikuleo is he's really grown this year, and he's had the opportunity to do that.
You know how I feel about Hikuleo.
Sure.
You know that I'm like, find a promotion that loves a big man like Hikuleo, like New Japan seems to want to throw him in the post brackets of every tournament he's in.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's worked. It's gotten him to the point where he's kind of, again, he's credible, he's believable, he's a plausible challenger. So I think, it's going to be fun. And honestly, I don't know exactly which way it's going to go, but what I will say is that let me do some counting here for a moment. I think it's the last 11 times that the IWGP Tag Team Championship has been defended at the Tokyo Dome. It has changed hands. So if that's not a tell, I don't know what is.
Yeah, the only thing
they could have changed hands either way.
Well, the IWGP. I'm talking specifically about the IWGP.
Got it.
Yeah, that it always changes hands at the Tokyo Dome.
Yeah, the only reason they would go away for that is we were talking about how we believe, and like I said, without it, it's not like we're flies on the wall inside the offices, but we thought they were trying to build the tag team division around Aussie Open, and then Aussie Open got taken away.
Mm-hmm.
With that, if they're trying to rebuild the tag team division and they have a lot of really good tag teams, TMDK, War Dogs, who Dunstan thinks should be in this match, Hikuleo, Phantasmo, all that, and others besides that. Perhaps the best way to rebuild it is to create a super team. And Bishamon winning World Tag League 3 years in a row and coming through winning both titles at one point over the course of they've already won both of these titles before. And then, winning again here, it could just be like they're creating this Mount Everest in the tag team division so that when someone does defeat them, it, sets up that team instead of being a hot potato title, like, oh, this is a big deal. They beat Bishamon. Nobody beats Bishamon. That's creating a super team. That would be the argument, I think, for having them retain. Also, I think how confident they feel about keeping El Phantasmo will also come into play in the booking in this one too. So, if I'm good either way, both of these, I enjoy watching both of these teams, and I'm just hoping for a good match. I probably think it'll go 15-20 and should be exciting because they seem to have plans to, they've had the 3. They've had the block match, they had the finals match, and they have this one. I think each one's going to try to build on the others somehow, and these 4 guys are capable of doing it.
Absolutely.
So, given name value of the guys in here and familiarity to the greater wrestling audience, and you look at this entire card, right? I would argue that this match is in the position of being most likely to exceed expectations from people watching it. When they're watching and based off of what they know of the wrestlers and what they see and what this match ends up being, I think people are going to be talking about this and being very surprised with how much they like this match. That's just my kind of prediction with the talent level in this and what people know about the talent level on this match.
I think this. I mean, one last thing. I think keep an eye on Hikuleo in this match. I think this match is going to be built towards him having a
super
moment.
mega thunder kick off the top rope.
I'm here for it.
Yep.
God, his knees. I told him straight to his face. His knees. I cringed when he hit those knees.
He said he was okay. It was amazing.
Ooh, wow. This is the match I'm most excited for on the card. Flat out. Hiromu Takahashi versus El Desperado.
Yeah, this is the shut up and take my money match here. It's another one that can go either way, because you can make the case for Hiromu keeping the title to set up the anniversary show of Hiromu versus Naito at some point. You can do that. You can also continue this story of Desperado fighting to get to that one last hurdle to get on Hiromu's level. And, you know, I've always kind of called this, I said it yesterday, that Desperado is the Eddie Guerrero Black Tiger to Hiromu's Liger. He's the Dynamite Kid to Hiromu's Tiger Mask. You know, it's these two are the generational rivals. The one thing we haven't really seen is that big win on the big show for Desperado over Hiromu in that sense. You know, he had his mask ripped and he threw it away, you know, but he came up short against Hiromu. He's just the last hurdle to climb over. It could be here, but if Hiromu keeps the belt and they make it just a row of belts for the roll call, that's another story to tell too.
That is another story to tell. I mean, I have to counterpoint you though that the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship has changed hands in 10 of 11 matches at the Tokyo Dome over the last back to 2014, and the only time it was retained was Despy over Hiromu in 2022. So but it didn't feel, to your point though, that didn't feel like a moment, right? Because it was a retention. It's not a win of a title. So with that said, like, I think your point still stands, because I don't feel like that was really built up the way it could have been. But also, like, I don't really know that this match has either. I think I honestly think these guys should have left this rivalry behind for a couple of years after that Best of Super Juniors final with the ripped mask. It was just such a tremendous match, and they've now gone back to it a couple of times, and I think that they're hunting for that. They're trying to catch that lightning in that same bottle. And I hope that they change the bottle or change the lightning, because I think we need something more than just some history between these guys to bring that fire and passion again. And, you know, I think the most interesting thing to me about this match is going to be, what does Master Water do on the outside? Because I assume he's going to second Desperado.
That's an interesting thought. Yeah, I mean, he might have something to do with it. We'll find out.
Show somewhere.
Well, this one. Now, I have talked myself, and so this is the IWGP US UK Heavyweight Championship match. It's going to be the global title. No one understands. But anyway, they're making a new title, a global title out of this one. Will Ospreay, Jon Moxley, David Finlay. Like I said, I have talked myself in circles. You can make an interesting case for any of these three guys winning this match. And I can't decide. I'm probably going to go into January 4th without a real firm prediction here on this one, because any one of them could walk out with this belt and have an interesting story to tell. You know, Moxley was never supposed to lose the U.S. title. That happened because of a typhoon. David Finlay, you always expect the leader of Bullet Club to be in a prominent position. Yes, we know that Ospreay's leaving for AEW, but it doesn't necessarily mean he has to drop it here, because there might be another chapter to that story. So, Chris, what's your read on this? Because it seems like every time I look at this, I come up with a different reason to change my prediction.
I guess if I'm a betting man, and I am, I'm betting Will Ospreay, because I just think Moxley, I love him. I just don't think I don't see a path for that title with him.
Mm-hmm.
Finlay is the obvious choice. He's the New Japan guy. He's the guy that's sticking it out. He's the leader of the Bullet Club. You name it, right? He checks a lot of boxes. But I think Ospreay, I think that's the surprising pick because everyone knows he's on his way out.
Right.
But I think Ospreay's got a passion for New Japan, a passion for his time with New Japan, and he wants to set New Japan up for success in the future. And with that, he's already got a challenge out to Okada for Battle in the Valley, which is very unusual.
Right.
Very unusual for there to be some sort of challenge for the next thing when you've got, someone in a featured match on a big show. So Ospreay wants in my perception is that Ospreay wants two things out of that. He wants people to see him beat Okada because, his clean win over Okada in the G1 was in the middle of the G1. It wasn't really in a featured spot. That'll be the main event, no matter if there's a title on the line or not.
Right.
And I think that sets up potentially a double surprise, right? Because I think Ospreay winning this match is surprise number one. Because people have already written it off because they think he's not going to be around. He's probably going to be around through February.
Yeah.
He'll debut with AEW probably at Revolution, which gives you two months, 60 days to work something out with Ospreay. Yeah. And it sets up a situation where this title looks big, right? I mean, Will Ospreay, the US title had a ceiling on it, and this global heavyweight championship doesn't have to have that ceiling. This global heavyweight championship could be this generation's Intercontinental Championship at the beginning of the Intercontinental, where it's really that, that 1B title.
Yeah. The Nakamura title, the Nakamura Intercontinental title.
Exactly. Like that era of the Intercontinental title. And, if you get someone like Kazuchika Okada to challenge for a singles title that isn't the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, that's a big deal, whether he wins or not. And especially if he wins, but also I think it does set up another situation where everyone's like, well, Ospreay's definitely going to lose it at Battle in the Valley. And then you pull another, swerve out and he wins again. And I think then you set up whatever is going to be to get the title off of him to move on. And, maybe that's Shota Umino. And there's a dozen options. Maybe you go back to David Finlay and you get the singles match. So I think there's a lot of options here. Yeah. Many of which are very surprising. I guess, like I said, if I'm betting, I've talked myself into thinking Will Ospreay's winning this because people think he won't. It's kind of like when John Moxley won the US championship when people didn't think he was gonna win it 2 nights in a row at the Double Dome. They thought like, oh, he'll win one, so he has a second match, so he's on the second card, and then he's gonna lose it, and then he just won again. So I think we're gonna maybe do that again.
So I think two things are true in this match. One, it was weird that Will Ospreay and John Moxley met again after they had a match in Chicago for a singles match a year and a half ago, and them teasing that for Wrestle Kingdom seemed decidedly unusual. So them adding David Finlay made a lot of sense after the fact. So why is David Finlay in this match? Because New Japan wants David Finlay to be seen in a high-profile match. But in order to further legitimize David Finlay in New Japan, this isn't the title that he needs to win. He needs to win the IWGP title in some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, it is only going to be half measures, and he will not be seen as a top threat in the promotion. But he needs to look strong in this match.
Or he could win this match after Okada challenged for it.
He could.
Right?
Like I think is going to happen.
Sorry, this title.
Yeah, here's what I think is going to happen. I think David Finlay is going to have this match won against Moxley, and Will Ospreay steals the win. So that optically, it looks that Finlay could have won and should have won, but Will Ospreay still retains the championship, and in which you serve many, many masters, in which the time comes that Finlay challenges after the Cup, at Dominion, post, whatever it's going to be. He is considered viable because he almost beat both John Moxley and Will Ospreay, and it was stolen from him.
Sure,
I like
that. That's very Bullet Club.
Yeah, that's very Bullet Club. And the other side of this too is I think Finlay is my early odds-on favorite for New Japan Cup.
Okay,
could be yeah.
Sure. That could be the spot where
Dominion, he is in the IWGP heavyweight title picture.
I mean, they got to get him. They got to elevate him if they're going to keep him in the role.
Yeah.
So yeah,
start the clock when he lost the never openweight title. I was literally like, start the clock on Finlay.
Okay, now there you go. It's a testament here that it's so wide open. It's interesting either way. And then we've already talked a lot about this one, the Kazuchika Okada and Bryan Danielson, the special singles match. I think all of us are just hoping that we get the match they wanted to have in the first place, and with all the false finishes, the big moves, the timing, that's what these guys do best, the dramatic, the timing. And of course, all that went away when Danielson got hurt and panicked a little bit. So hopefully here we will get the match that they intended to have at Forbidden Door.
I mean, Danielson's on fire right now too. I mean, anyone who watched the C2 knows that. And, I think his head's in it. I think he's motivated. I think it'll be cool to see him walk out for a singles match in the Tokyo Dome. I mean, he hasn't wrestled in Japan he hasn't wrestled for New Japan in Japan since 2004 when he was still American Dragon.
That's wild.
So, and he did have a couple of undercard matches in the Tokyo Dome. So this is not Danielson's first time in. So hopefully the butterflies aren't there. Not that he's a butterfly kind of guy. But yeah, I mean, I hope this match feels the same. I hope I feel at the end of this match the way I felt at the end of Omega and Ospreay last year, which is I love pro wrestling. Like I want to just have that feeling. Yeah. And you know what? If I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have it. And I don't think it's out of the question that either of these guys can win, but I do think that it does feel very much like a Kazuchika Okada victory after tapping out. And all that. And we've kind of discussed that already, but I mean, my hope for this match is just that I can sit back and relax with hopefully a cold pizza by that time, because it'll be 5 hours after I had the pizza delivered.
Right. Yes.
And, I'll get my second wind as we head into the back half, or the top of this card. I think the last two matches together will probably be the last hour and a half to 2 hours of the card. I think they're going to get all the time they need to tell the story they want to tell. And even that's better than a frantic AEW pay-per-view where you got to get it in 25 or 26 minutes. I think they could go 40, and I don't know that anyone would feel it.
Yeah. It'll be a lot of fun.
This match does not have to do a whole lot of work to exceed the Forbidden Door match, and I hope that at least does that. Because this should be very, 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 very underlined, very special.
Yes.
Yeah. And, it's a big deal for Bryan Danielson, too. This is a bucket list item for him, is to do this match in this situation. And he does this one on January 4th. If he makes it to Arena Mexico in 2024, Danielson's going to be the happiest guy in the entire business right there.
Give him Mystico. Let's go.
Oh, let's do that. Absolutely. Let's do that. Yes.
Last one. We've done it. We have done it. The main event of the 2024 Wrestle Kingdom 18. Kanada, the IWGP champion, versus the G1 winner and challenger, Tetsuya Naito.
Chris, they have booked this thing to the point that if we do not get the Naito victory and the roll call, I don't see a path to that crowd leaving the dome happy and satisfied. And so it has to happen, right? They've got to. They can't just upset. It would be such a flat ending for literally anything else.
It feels so obvious. I mean, it feels like
that it gives you the willies almost. It's so obvious it gives you the willies.
That's so the Naito fans in my life, and I Naito's fine, right? He's not my favorite wrestler. I didn't kind of come up with the Naito thing in my heart, and so be it. Like, that's life. I love him. I think he's great. I think
I'm with you, Chris.
A really key role, but I totally get that he's a guy that a lot of people have attached themselves to. Yeah. And
attend the Church of Naito, plant the flag of Naito, say what you will.
Yeah.
There are people that are just in that camp.
And to even I think that the build to this match, it feels so obvious that he's going to be the winner that it's this false sense of security that people who love Naito don't want to, they don't want to admit exists. Yeah. So, I mean, my thing is there's nowhere for Sonata to go after this. His reign has been lackluster at best. The people that he's defended the title against have not been the top level stars of any promotion. He has been a fine, keep the title warm challenger, and he looks tremendous on a poster. I mean, look at this man. Yes. He has the look, and this isn't even the best picture, right? There's a couple of pictures going around that I'm like, is that Inoki? And But on that, Naito's the anti-hero and Sonata looks like the hero, right? So this poster is perfect. But I don't see a path forward. The real question is, do they actually give the roll call? Because I mean, you can play with a lot of emotions as this whole thing goes on. And to me, the most interesting thing is what does happen after the match is over. After Naito does the roll call, who's the challenger? And that I've said that almost every Wrestle Kingdom. Last year I said the same thing because we knew Jay White was essentially on his way out. So, the question to me is always, do we even get the next challenger yet? Or is that the next story that gets told somewhere else?
You can do that at Dash or something like that. But yeah, it's an interesting thought because they have set it up so much that this roll call needs to happen that if it doesn't, it's just going to land so flat. So my prediction is we are going to get it. Here's the little twist in it, though. I think someone's going to come out and attempt to break it up.
Oh, okay.
And fail. Like that could be the thing that either Evil or Ren or someone like that does, or run in. But the rest of LIJ is there and saying, "Oh hell no," and fighting them off. Throw him over the top rope, and then Naito picks up the microphone again and goes through it. That's just
Evil is perfect for that role.
Yeah,
because he's not part. He would be the guy that would have been part of it, but
and he's kind of Boris and Natasha, from Rocky and Bullwinkle,
mustache twirling villain.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. So he's that guy that you throw over the top rope. Everyone thinks he's the next challenger, and then he's just kind of off into the ether, and then somebody else
away with you.
Up.
Villain.
yeah that'd be fun. I'd have a good time with that. My fear is that they would then go with it.
That's it. You do worry about that, but I think that is a possibility because I do think that like that one title defense, they're going to want the entire crowd, no split at all. Just Naito is our hero and he's the champion, and we get the babyface heel dynamic. But
sure,
there a lot of good options. Like I said, up and down this card, there are a lot of great wrestlers in New Japan, so they have choices, and two of them are within LIJ. So I do like the idea of perhaps the junior heavyweight champion standing next to the never openweight champion. The idea that both of those guys could end up getting title shots or matches with, I guess the anniversary show isn't necessarily a title match, but matches with Naito as almost a victory tour for LIJ. That's not a bad way to go either.
Sure.
Chris, 5.5 hours, main card, over, under. What do you got?
Main card, under.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to go under too.
Yeah,
just under 5.5 hours.
I would bet main card you're looking closer to 4.5.
Okay.
Yeah, I would set the over under at 4.5.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah,
I'll take that. Just as somebody that's going to be up in the middle of the night. So
start at 10:30 Pacific, 12:30
Central,
a.m. your time, and then main card starts an hour and a half later. Is that
an hour later?
An hour later. So at 11:30 Pacific.
Yeah.
And then 1:30 Central. Okay.
Yes.
USVA guy, by the way, he says, what if Sonata either stops the roll call or stops Evil from breaking up the roll call? Oh,
Sonata doesn't have that energy now. What?
No.
He's not going to have it after a match.
No.
Yeah. No.
I think we can just call this thing with Sonata, to be honest, a failed experiment.
Sonata's going to moonwalk back to the upper mid card, and he's going to have a great time in it. And, he'll get into that global, whatever. He'll play around for a bit.
I mean, I'm not trying to be insulting to Sonata. Just like, was he underrated? Was he overrated? I think we found out he was rated.
He was
upper mid card. He was
people are overwhelmed. Some people are underwhelmed.
All of the opinions about Sonata have ended up being correct. Every single one of them.
We were all right. Go figure. All
right. So this is the second part of our 2-part Wrestle Kingdom preview. Chris Samsa, I want to thank you again for giving us 2.5 hours of your time.
I really appreciate it, Chris.
Covering what was 2023 in New Japan. If you want, please go back into the archive, check out our preview with Scott Edwards yesterday, in which we covered all of Wrestle Kingdom week leading into Wrestle Kingdom. We just did not have enough time to cover Noah and all the things that would be adjacent for Chris to talk about. But Chris, thank you for your time. Plug anything that you want to throw out there. Sport of Pro Wrestling, what you got.
Sport of Pro Wrestling will house my my full Wrestle Kingdom preview document, which is currently sitting at 20 pages. So get stoked. And I haven't even touched the tag team matches or bullet pointed notes. So we're looking at a fat one, but I'm trying to get my boy Walker something to read on the plane. So I'm trying to get it done quick. But yeah, so I'm that you'll find that at sportofprowrestling.com. But honestly, right now, the best place to find me, unfortunately, is the cesspool that is Twitter.
I am Twitter are you on Blue Sky or Threads or anything?
I mean, I exist on all of those places, but I'm
trying so hard.
I have not posted anywhere. And honestly, my reach is really strong on Twitter right now for whatever reason. Like people are seeing the work. So I'm gonna keep stoking that,
cultivating
flame.
that.
Yeah, right. I mean, I see the impressions go up and the followers are steady, and that's, whatever. It all is what it is, but that's the best place to find me. I'm kind of everywhere this week. If you're paying attention to the New Japan world, I'm trying to dip my toe in everywhere and try to kind of, catch back up with some old friends like you guys and meet some new people.
Thank you for making time for us.
Yeah. I appreciate you guys having me, and I'm actually off to talk with your pal Scott Edwards here in probably about 5 minutes. So I get to keep on keeping on.
That's great.
Steven, take us home.
No, it's always a lot of fun, Chris. We're genuinely thankful, and we're looking forward to the next time you're on around either G1 or Wrestle Kingdom time. We'll do it all again.
We will do it again soon, guys. Thank you.
All right. So for Chris Samsa, Jeremy Finestone, I'm Stephen Conway. Thank you so much. We will be back on Wrestle Kingdom Day. Just our usual time slot, 5:30 p.m.
And Stephen Conway's birthday.
Yes. I get my bag of kettle chips. I'm so excited. Almost as great as the show. But for that day, we will be on a regular time, and we will, of course, be running down the biggest event of the year, Wrestle Kingdom. And so thank you all for joining us, watching and listening, whether you're on the podcast or here. We thank you very much for your time. So for Speaking of Strong Style, see you later. We will talk to you again very soon.